Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Hope everybody's having a good Thursday afternoon here. I am Brendan. This is Brandon. We are neck deep in the offseason here. We are still going through the first several weeks of free agency. We are about a month away from the 2026 NFL draft. So we're right in the middle of it. We're going through it. We're trying to figure out how to feel, how to think. And today we're going to be talking about more draft stuff. How you doing today, Brandon?
I'm doing great, man. It's been a good off season so far, just nice and solid. Along we go, and boy, the draft just right around the corner now. I think we're technically inside of 30 days.
Right. So we are getting close. Mariners kick off tonight, by the way. First Mariners game tonight as well. So things are happening.
Let's go.
The Sonics look like they are officially coming back. So things are happening in the world of Seattle sports, people. A lot of fun stuff, and it's mostly, I would say, good stuff right now.
I'd say so. Hey, Sonic's coming back alone. It's going to be a shot in the arm to this community here and that. People have been, dying to see that happen. And hopefully Mariners this year can find some magic, man. You just need to get some of the youngsters to really come along and hopefully pop early on to contend, not only with what we got in this, of course, division, but also out there with LA. If you do get past the AL, they're just always standing there, and they look tough as ever.
That's right. So today's show is going to be all about the cornerback position in this upcoming draft, which I think is one of the few positions in this draft that is strong, not just relative to the draft, but also relative to other classes we've had in recent times. And I think it's a position that the Seahawks are very likely to attack in this draft because you've lost Woolen to free agency. You did bring back Josh Jobe, but there is a little bit of a hole at that spot right now. And to this point, you haven't really addressed it in terms of outside free agency. So I think you need to bring in somebody with some upside, maybe somebody that needs a year in the oven to really learn how to play in the NFL. But I do think you're going to need to come out of this draft with an intriguing cornerback prospect at the least.
Yes, I agree with you. In fact, I might even go above where you might be at this, where I do believe that this is the strongest positional group in this draft, and maybe by far. It's going to have one of the few players that comes closest to being a blue chip graded player in the draft for me, though I don't get there quite to that spot as I don't to anybody in this draft. But it is one that is also going to bring up a lot of interesting questions for the Seattle Seahawks as far as approach, Brendan, because it is so deep. How does that challenge, the value of your board? You want to go the highest on the value of your board, but then you can come back around, and if you get an extra pick in the fourth round or come back up into the fifth round, you could go out there and find a guy that maybe is not that far of a drop off from the guy that's the highest on your board when you're picking early. And some of that's going to be very intriguing to see how Seattle tries to balance that from John's perspective. You're right. We need it. It's not like absolute dire need, but you can see how it all just assembles nicely, and that an injury, and you can put this guy out there or have him challenge with Maya Pritchett. So it's not just de facto Namaya's job or the Igbanihi, the guy. That's going to take me a while to master that name, Brendan. But it's going to be,
it's like mahogany. It's Igbinogany. I've kind of learned how to just let it flow.
Igbinogany. That'll help me. That'll help me a big time on this. You know how I struggle with these sometimes, and some of those names I can say it 50 times and I'm still going to butcher it. But I do think that this is one that you can find a player out there who can actually be a real viable player. And it is one where, outside of that one guy that's kind of on the edge of being a blue chipper for me, Brendan, I do think that there's really some solidity. And it's part of what makes it a strength in this draft is the solidity / kind of maybe can immediately play kind of guy in what they're going to be able to give you. They just don't give you the roof that goes up, to skyscraper depth.
Yeah, it is an interesting thought here. There's a lot of good stuff in this draft, even all the way down to day 3 at this position. I agree. So much so that there are going to be guys that we do not talk about during this show that are still good. Like, there are going to be guys that we skip over just because we don't want to go too deep here that are still appealing. So you're right. There is some thought to that. There is you could get a pretty good player, I think, at this position in even the 6th round with our pick at 188. The Damani Jackson of Alabama, off the top of my head, he may be available there. I think that's a pretty good pick.
Indeed. And that's where it's the value just presses down, and that's back to where you start to go, okay, do I have to get this here for this position, knowing it's that deep, but you may love the player. And I think that if they do jump on a quarterback early in the draft, Brendan, I think it is going to speak to the fact, knowing they can get the depth later on, especially if John trades back and still find very good value, that it does mean they really like that player and that this is one that has really attracted them and that they're really sold on, not just that he's, merely the highest value on their board, but that he's a guy that they've goes, no, there's something a little bit different about him that we've got to get him here now because of that.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that's going to be today's show. But before we get there real quick, I do want to spend a minute here because this was some pretty big news and it came earlier than I thought it would. I thought we would maybe get this around June or July, but the Seahawks decided to go ahead and pull the trigger on the Jackson Smith-Njigba extension after activating the 5th-year option on him. So the 5th-year option is going to be somewhere around, what was it, 29 million for the 2027 season. And then the 4-year extension is about 168.8 million. So I know it seems pretty, perfunctory at this point, but any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that there's two real main key things for me on this, from my perspective of it, and that is that we didn't see this happen in June, July, as you thought, because of the secondary reason I'm going to give. And so I like the fact that you're getting this done now. I mean, it would be ideal. The problem is you can't typically get this deal done because you have a player that's going to hold you over the top of the coals and squeeze you out on every last dollar bill they can possibly get in the deal, especially when it comes to the money up front and getting that bag secured like that. And it's the secondary part of this that to me is the part that stands out to it, and the part that I think people in Seattle understand, but nationally they just didn't understand or get this really, outside of them saying, well, he's a great receiver, you got to pay for great players, that's just the way that goes. But they don't understand actually the value of the contract, the value of doing this deal. Because you stacked the years on, because you didn't put bonus money on the front of this, that's why the deal gets done in now and not in June. If we looked at this deal getting done in June, we would have looked at the parameters of being probably $30 million of bonus money, $40 million of bonus money. And instead, what Jackson did as a good soldier, doing this thing that we all want all these players to do. And I know on the surface of it, because it's at $42 million, it looks like, well, how much is he giving us a discount at that rate? But he's signing a 6-year contract. He's signing almost what would be a lifetime contract here as an NFL player and backloading the cap hit onto 4 years down the line, essentially, for where it really hits to where that's going to, lock in. And so I come back to it and I say, if we have a multitude of players that are willing to do this, you are going to be able to build up such a super type team at that point, because it runs counter to how every other player tends to do stuff in this situation, which is just give me the money now. I want it in hand now. And I love that Jackson looks at this and says, if it's guaranteed, my foot falls off tomorrow, that guarantee still hits into my pocketbook down the line a couple of years. What's the difference? So I can invest it earlier. I mean, yeah, there's an advantage in that, but the other advantage of this is now you're helping your team to be able to soup this team up in the interim. And I love that about this deal, Brennan.
Right. Like I wasn't expecting him to not only break, but kind of shatter the record for average annual value, but after thinking about it, looking at that 5th-year option, which is way less than the value of the extension, I think that's kind of the trade-off you make when you activate the 5th-year option. The player kind of feels like I need a little bit more to kind of account for that. And getting that 5th-year option is a big deal. It makes it so that the 6 years left on his deal, the actual average annual value is like 32.5 million. So when you actually look at it in that way, and I think it's important to look at it in that way, it's really not that bad. And it's actually better than like what Jamar Chase did, because remember, when Jamar Chase got extended, he had already finished his 4th year. So he had the 5th-year option. I think he had the 5th-year option and then the extension. So his extension, while it was less in terms of the years added, if you factor in the 5th-year option, was actually more per year.
It's a new development, right, Brendan? Because we've always shot down, and rightfully so, this thought process of the utilization of the 5th year to be so you could grind out a 5th year of a guy on his contract. And that's always been silly as an option, because it's like you're only doing that if the guy's not been particularly good, but then giving you some flashes. And so you're still like Kyle Pitts hopeful in the 5th year that you'll throw it out there. But that's not the case in what's being done here. It's being done as a contractual tool to be able to, and if you cannot be a cheap ass team, like you mentioned, the Bengals, or let's say the Cowboys, who would play this type of maneuver as well, right? I think they made CeeDee Lamb play through, I believe, the 4th year of his deal. So if you're just not going to be a cheap ass about it, and now you can get the 2 years and you can get the player that can wrap his head around the fact that I'm going to get the money. What difference? Okay, I'm going to wait a year, but in waiting a year, I'm also going to preserve this team that much better, because those first 2 cap hit years for JSN this year and next year are juicy, and juicy for the team, not for Jackson. And this is where John could be setting a precedent here, where if these players now that are coming behind can fall in line to understand what they're doing here, especially the first round guys, Devin Witherspoon, Byron Murphy, you slot your contracts on the back of this with JSN and we put it all now into tandem. Now you've got a lot of money you're saving up here on the front side, because it's less about all those bonus hits coming in now and all those big contracts, and more about now being able to massage the numbers out. Just massage them out. And on top of getting the player into club control for a little bit longer than we've typically had when we've come out of these rookie deals, and you do wait. It's like a 3-year extension.
Yeah, by the time we get to the really ugly cap hits, the deal will be renegotiable pretty easily. Like if you look at it, the dead cap hits get to the point where you can actually move off the player, you can trade the player, you can extend the player. I seriously doubt we're going to get to 2030 or whatever it is, and JSN's actually going to be on a $50 million cap hit. I don't think that'll happen. So yeah, it'll inflate. It'll get up to like 33, 34, 35 million. But by the time we get there, that's going to be fine. If he's still a really good player, which I think he will be.
Yeah. Well, and let's remember that the what 50 million looks like right now too. I mean, there's even this possibility, what 50 million looks like right now ain't what 50 million is going to look 4 years from now. And now you could also very well get to that point and you're like, well, he's still performing at a high level. He's getting paid high, and it's not that bad for player or for team. You have a lot of ways you can go with this. This gives you flexibility in the future on your point. Is a little bit of risk because you're putting that guarantees on them down the line. It's a 6-year contract. Yes. But I would say when you look at the history of these guys that are these rookies coming off these contracts like that are these kind of stars that are still young, you are tending to get your pay for play, in this. There are going to be those Brandon Ayuk type situations that go completely off the rails, but I don't think that that's the rule of thumb that we're seeing most of the time with these kind of contracts with these type of players.
Yeah, I'm not terribly worried about it. And even if it is like a slight overpay, the one thing that I talk about a lot, it's okay to overpay superstars. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not the end of the world if you're saying, oh, we should have given him 38 and we gave him 42. I don't care about that. What I care about is like, oh, we should have given that guy 2, but we gave him 5. Or we should have given that guy 3, but we gave him 7. That's the kind of stuff that I think really cripples your franchise much more so.
Well, and it's about the structure of the deals, because if this was let's just say that this was only simply a, 3-year extension or whatever, and that there was at 38 million per year on average, but then you put a bunch of bonus money on the front of this and it hit the cap harder this year for him than it is right now. It hit harder in the next year's cap than it's going to hit. Well, then I would much rather take this $42 million deal where I've stacked the 4 years on the top of it and becomes a 6-year deal than do that as the alternative, in my opinion. I think that's a better structure of a contract.
Right. And as you say, the Seahawks have a lot of, they still have a lot of cap space to play with here, and they probably still will after they do whatever they do with Witherspoon. So that is a benefit here. So much so that they feel empowered to spend a few $million on their 5th wide receiver, Bobo. That was the other thing that happened over the last week. They matched the offer sheet on Bobo, which basically means a multi-year commitment. There's not going to be really any moving off of Bobo in the next 2 years, but they felt empowered to do that because they can afford it, I think. Normally, for other teams, I think they'd be like, we can't spend that kind of money on a wide receiver 5, but this team feels like they can.
Yeah, I can understand completely why John did it. It's not that expensive of a deal when you break it down for a 2-year deal for a guy for what he supplies. I think he's not always been utilized as much as he possibly could be as a pass catcher because of the fact that you just haven't needed him to. You've remained pretty good at wide receiver. Your health remained pretty good at wide receiver over his time here. And I think it also does speak to John probably confirming a little bit of what I think you and I think both, which is that this wide receiver class, once you get past the first round, has got some struggle bus on it. It's got some holes. I don't think we're going to be doing a show on the wide receivers. And we weren't going to do the show on the wide receivers before this news. So like this, just reacting to this, we were already like, I
can tell you right now, a receiver show is not going to happen. If we take one, then good for them. I guess we could cut Cody White and save a little bit of money there, but That's like it. Nobody else can get cut. Everyone else is locked in. There's that.
And even that, you're going to be committing to put 6 receivers on the roster at that point.
Yeah.
And does the team want to do that for a team that wants to run the ball at the foremost, for a team that wants to have tight ends coming out the yin yang at the foremost, the team that's going to want to have 4 defensive tackles and 4 edges? When you want to put a roster together that's got a finite amount of space, do the numbers even add up to 6, Brendan? I'd ask you.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree. Yeah. All right. Real quick here, we got a couple of super chats already. The Warhammer guy, $1.99, giving Jake crap about Puka is the best thing ever. Yeah, that would be the other thing that happened over the last week. And I know it's not really our business, but it's hard to not make it our business.
I've never seen a tour quite like a wide receiver who's due to get paid. Puka, and by the way, the new nickname is sticking forever, by the way, Puka Nacua. I'm that's going to be, I think, forever the name I'm calling him. And I'm sorry, but that's just too good. And get angry if you want, Rams fans, but it's coming forever probably. But Puka Nacua has been wild this offseason. He's like on a party tour, it would seem like. I'm sure he's doing his training, and maybe this is what he's always done. He just has had the cameras on him like he's had throughout this offseason. It's almost like he's a reality television show walking this offseason. I'm not even looking for it. It just comes up on my feed, Oh, here's him passed out on a bus, half drunk, and the girl twerking next to him is the one he's going to be biting. It's a weird offseason, man, and the guy hasn't gotten paid. This is usually behavior you see for guys that do get paid, and I'll say this, I would not be surprised at this point with the Rams, them kicking the tires on A.J. Brown. I would not be shocked with the Rams at this point with all the contracts that they've got to sign, because they got 4 big bad daddies coming down the line. Big bad daddy contracts, like hit you in the gut. Oh, and they're not set up like we're set up to be able to sustain this stuff in that way unless they void year stuff out down the line. So they're looking at this going, in the highest paid of that bunch is Puka. Is that, do I want to do that? Or I could go and get the max comp. I don't even know if you can get max compensation at this point, but you can get real good compensation for Puka in a trade. And then Brendan, like, you come around and you take, like, let's say they went out and they, get a first round pick and a second round pick for Puka, and then draft a guy and trade for AJ Brown. Is that a better wide receiver core? And you still have an extra pick there. Is that a better wide receiver core, than what you have now? And then you don't have to pay the $44 million per year for Puka, because they can't bury the 5th year option. They don't have the 2 years. They got the one year.
Yeah. And
what do you think?
Puka might hold out if he doesn't get extended because he's making so little money. Like, he might actually be like, I'm not going to play on the 4th year of this crappy deal. I would expect
they can't play that dance, Brendan. They're in full on, we are going for it. Damn tomorrow. We just dropped a first round pick and paid McDuffie and another. They are not in the mode of like, well, we can like wait that situation out and do a sort of staring contest to see who's going to give. They've got to decide this before the draft. And if you're going to get the trade, you're going to want it before the draft so you can get the compensation back so you can make the flip of trades that you want to make. So to me, I look at it and I just go, boy, I would be so nervous from their perspective. And if this is the case where you're anticipating, like you're saying, they're negotiations gonna be hard, it's gonna be costly, and you don't want to spend that money. I could see something wild happen. I'm not saying they're gonna do it, but like this could, if they were already kind of on the edge coming up into a couple of days ago, Brendan, which you could see them as an organization going, okay, Puka, you're getting a little bit annoying here. This is getting a little bit, what's going on here? That this could be the little thing that kicks it over the other side to me, from their consideration, especially with AJ Brown kind of softly out there on the market, just kind of softly out there lurking.
Yeah. I think there are some advanced metrics with AJ Brown that paint the picture of a receiver who might not really have it anymore, but maybe he's not motivated. Like there's some stuff going on there. I get it.
Well, reportedly too, the knee was scared off the Rams last time because they, the Eagles came back to the Rams and they're like, all right, they did like the Crosby Raiders to the Ravens thing where they're like, all right, we're just letting you know, you're going to look at this knee and your doctor might pass out, the nurse next to him might go,
right.
So just be ready for that. And I think the Rams heard that and they were like, okay, all right.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's a bit of the factor here, but even if you wanted Brendan, from my perspective on this, you got Devontae Adams back, the first round outside the receivers in the first round, I don't like. But if you double dipped in a first round from a Rams perspective by making the trade with a Puka and you got maybe even a high first round pick and not an extra pick, and you're able to get a Jordan Tyson, Boston combination or, Jordan Tyson, Tay combination. Like I don't if I'm a Rams, I go, well, it's a young receiving core at that point, but I'm trying to run the ball. The thing with the Rams, I know that they like to pass a lot, but they still have built their whole personnel around the 12 personnel, 13 personnel, and running the ball. So there's the whole maximum investment into the wide receiver, and that's where they need to build the strength of their team. I could see them kind of, I'm not saying they will do this, but I could understand them trying to maybe pivot in a little bit of a slightly alternative direction on this one towards what they want the strength of their team to be.
Sean McLeodar, thank you for the $1.99. Can we pay Murphy, Zabel, and Iman in the future? Well, that's so far in the future right now. It kind of feels like that it's really hard to talk about it, but I think the answer is pretty much always yes, you can. You just have to decide if you want to when you get there.
Yeah, with Murphy, I think Murphy and Zabel becomes very easy because of the fifth year options and because they've hit their upside so fast that you can look at those deals and go, look, there's no doubt we're not letting you guys go. So, you're onto the fifth year option there on both those accounts. And hopefully you can set the stage with extending them. I think the nice part about this, Sean, is that they're staggered. So yeah, we've got 2 this year. And we got the cross one done last year, a little bit at the end of the year before the new season went in. And so then next year you get Murphy done. And so you can kind of stagger these deals, especially, as I said at the top of the show on this, if you're able to take the 2 years of a first round pick and supply those as the first base to the new deal that you're putting down and get the players to do that. And I don't know if you can do this with every player. It's probably going to be hard to do it, but at least to some degree manage in that way, all the more reason you're able to get these deals done then and fit everything in. So yes, you definitely can.
Yeah, by the time we pay Zabel and Eamon Warrior, or at least by the time the cap hits on those guys get really big, Leonard Williams will have probably retired for one. Like that's a big one that's gone. Guys like DeMarcus Lawrence, Cooper Kupp will have definitely retired. That's a no-brainer. Or they won't be here anymore if they want to do, they want to try to play till they're 40. Good for them, but I don't think it's going to be here where they do it. Charbonnet is probably not that Charbonnet is a big cap hit right now, but I don't think Charbonnet is going to get re-signed, so we're not going to have to worry about a big deal there. So I think it's important to keep stuff like that in mind. There are players that are going to be falling off the cap here too.
Yeah, and especially with the lack of the dead money that seems to be set up for the future as it stands right now, where we don't have any anchor holding down the process of being able to utilize all that cap space, which we know can be hard for teams when they've got to run into that. And so everything looks good. John's done a really good job of coming into this offseason. He cleaned the whole house up. He did the whole spring cleaning of the cap over the last 3 years, from bad money out, dead money contracts, trading players you don't want to pay, to now everything's set up in a real pristine manner moving into the future. And because you've been patient this offseason and you haven't gone crazy or done something wild, it remains so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm not worried about this right now. I'm not worried about this. We will be able to pay who we want to pay in the future. Maybe by the time we get there, we'll decide we don't want to pay one of these guys, but I don't think so. I doubt it.
Yeah, I would be surprised with the way these guys are going because they're difference makers at the position, and it'll be money that you're willing to spend. And again, like you said, you're losing guys that'll just go to retirement. You'll have money naturally go off the books that frees up money to add them on the books, reinforce behind them, hopefully, and here we go. Dynasty time.
Yeah, Shaheed might be gone by the time we have to worry about those guys too. And we just signed him. Job, same thing. There's a lot. There's a lot of time between now and then. All right. So I think that's really about it in terms of stuff that isn't related directly to this draft. So let's go ahead and open up the book on these corners. There are a lot of them. We're not going to get to all of them today. I can tell you that right now. But we're going to try to get to some of the big ones. And this first one here, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think this is the one guy that we can completely cross off here. There's no way in the universe that Mansour Delane, and I did look it up, I think it is pronounced Delane, not Delani.
Yes, that's correct.
LSU, 22 years old. I don't think there's any way he's going to be there for us. He's going almost certainly in the top 10. I can't imagine him not being in the top 15. He's certainly not getting to 32. So he didn't do much at the combine, but 6 feet tall, 187 pounds, short arms. He did not have the greatest measurements in the world, I will acknowledge. But every big board that I use has him in the top 16. So Mansour Delane, what do you think?
I like him a lot. He's your typical SEC sticky corner, right around that 6 foot mark, really hyper athletic. There's a lot of these kind of guys that have come out of that conference over the years, and really the archetype of the NFL is one that you find a lot of those guys finding success once they get to it. I do agree that he's not likely to be at our spot because he seems to be a guy that the NFL's really fallen in love with. I did put a first round grade on him because of the fact that I just found that electric athleticism and speed, quickness combo, just those base elements like having an edge rusher where you say first step, quickness, dip, and bend. You got those first three things, and it's like, well, you're on your way. And he does have that. He is a kind of a little bit of a torpedo tackler where he comes on in, and it's not as much of the wrap and roll stuff that I like to see. And I think that Mike's going to tend to want to gravitate towards. But he's a willing tackler. You do look at the 30-inch arms. We talked last week. There's something I think this year that went on with the combine and how they measured the arms, because there's guys that when they went to the Senior Bowl were measured out at a certain length, and then they went to the combine across the board. Everybody's losing size, so somebody's wrong. Somebody's off. And I don't know. Do you remember this many? Because we're going to go through all these corners. Do you remember this many cornerbacks in recent history with like 30-inch arms as pure outside guys?
Yeah, it is a little bit funky. We're going to get into some guys here that are exactly what you're talking about. And I always defer to the combine. I assume that they're the impartial ones, but maybe not. Maybe not.
Yeah. Kind of hard to say on this. So the 30-inch arms is a tough one. 32 inches is where you want to be, folks, as an outside corner as far as the standard. So when you think of the standard, think of the standard of like this Will Campbell talk with the Patriots, a tackle throughout the playoffs, and all of the discussion around him, where you could see on the tape, and we exposed this in the Super Bowl, where lack of arm length is a real thing for tackles. You got a guy with under 32-inch long arms. I can show you on tape. I can show you Derek Hall, pushing him in the backfield because he doesn't have the same length that Derek has that he can supply there, and it shows up. And likewise with an outside corner at 30 inches, you're 2 inches off where you'd like to be. So I guess the first question to me for you, Brendan, is this guy going to have to transition full-time into the slot eventually as a player? Is he going to? I didn't see on tape the length being a problem. I didn't see on tape that there was a huge issue with it, though he is kind of one of those, moment of truth manglers I like to talk about, where he's not looking for the ball. He's just trying to tear it out once it's already arrived.
Yeah, I feel like he'll be able to play outside. What I will say is I don't know if he'll be very good in press, and that was something he was good at LSU. He had good technique in press. That may not survive to the NFL. But I think he'll be able to play outside if I had to guess. I think he's a really great player. He's got a great click and close. He's a hard hitter. He's versatile in man and zone. I like his ball tracking, good ball production the last 2 years. He's good at like really monitoring the play in front of him when he's observing from zone, and he's not going to overreact to what the quarterback does. He's not going to overreact to the routes. He's going to kind of balance it all. So great player. His coverage numbers last year were fantastic, by the way. He allowed less than 5 yards per target, and he's playing good competition every week because it's LSU. Now, he doesn't have a lot of speed, which is a little bit of a problem for him playing on the outside, and that combined with the length, I get why people wonder. His hips are a little bit segmented when he tries to flip them, which is a little bit of a problem. And I could see him drawing a lot of flags at the NFL level. He is a little physical, but I don't know. To me, he is probably about somewhere around like the 10th best player in this draft. I like him. There are more reservations here than there should be for the probable top corner in this draft. I will say that.
Yeah, I do like him, and I did get to the first round side of it because the baseline stuff that you need from an outside corner are kind of there. But I would have some worries in drafting him because if he goes into the slot, I don't know that he just becomes like a hyper dominant slot. A lot of what he's done really well with, and what you see from him is because he's good with the outside technique and good in staying so tight in coverage at all times throughout the course of the phase of the route. And that's where I don't know if I'd have as much, he's 8% of his snaps went out of the slot last year. So you just don't have as much the baseline to know if he'd be good into that range at the point. A little bit of a risky pick in the first round. I'm glad we're not going to have to be the ones to make that. I guess I'm just saying, I'm glad I like him, love him as a player. He's really good, but I'm glad we're not having to take that gamble at the cornerback position on this one.
Yeah, maybe Kansas City goes here because they just lost their top two corners.
Yeah.
Like that would make sense.
OJ McDuffie type. There's some OJ McDuffie type stuff in this guy, right?
Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, this next guy, I think there's a way he's there at 32 because we saw this last year with Will Johnson. And you have something similar going on here. I don't think it's likely. I doubt it. But I think it's on the table. Jermod McCoy. So this was going to be the top corner in this draft. He was ranked number one through most of 2025. He was ranked number one, even though he was not playing. So it was pretty definitive. But then he just didn't play, and Delane had an amazing senior season, and eventually things just happened. So Tennessee, 21 years old, got good height, almost 6'1", 188 pounds, which is a little lighter than average, but he can probably add a little bit of weight. Arm length is decent, and that was at this combine where apparently they may have made a mistake. So arm length's fine. Small hands, I guess. Didn't do any drills at the combine, which has some people alarmed because they're like, if he was healthy, why wouldn't he do the drills? Maybe he's still not healthy, which is why I think there is a universe where he's there at 32. But yeah, not that we have a lot to talk about with McCoy lately because he hasn't played football in like 500 days or something. But what do you think of Jermod McCoy?
Well, he's actually 20. I know your part says 20 years old, but he doesn't turn 21 according to what I looked into until just in the start of the season.
Yeah, what I always do with the ages is I list the age they're going to be on September 1st when the season starts. So that way you know how old they're going to be when they start playing for you.
So you know how much I love, we've talked about so many times, I call it the Jamar Chase effect a little bit. When you're watching Jamar Chase at 19 years old roasting SEC cornerbacks, you're like, yeah, I think I'm going to be able to project that guy as a star in the NFL level. So when I see Jamar McCoy as good as he was, albeit on the tape that was earlier, and know that that age is only 20 years old right now, 20 years old, I do understand the worries on ACL, but the younger players can tend to come back off that stuff pretty easily. And why I'm setting the stage for this is because there's not going to be, in my opinion, probably if this guy were to fall, a higher upside player available to you at your pick at 32. He is a guy that I am very close to putting a blue chip grade on. I can't obviously because of the injury. I can't because I don't have any recent, tape to really fall back on. And we know within college football, some of the stuff you need to see this sustained. You need to see that not final season fall off a cliff thing where they have the good junior year, but then suddenly they lose it. And what I see in him is elite press man ability, speed and change of direction are good for the position, not elite, but I think the elite in the press man where he can just stay tight on a guy and just be a shutdown, lockdown kind of corner. I call him the closer because the other thing he does is he can show separation, and that quarterback looks like in a moment he's got the separation there, and then he closes on it once the ball's in the air to go make a play on the ball. And I think he's got there's a couple of corners that can do this in this draft, but he does it as good as just about anybody. I think he's a solid run defender for the position. In addition to that, I think he is better in man than he is in zone, but I think he can do a bit of both of them. I think too, you can just really see where there's the physical upside and ability to that on this kid, where he's this young doing what he's doing. And once he starts to kind of grow into his man self, I think he's going to be even better. You got no chance on fade balls or go routes with him, and he can do it from that press man situation rather than have to be an off coverage and dropping to depth. I just look at a lot of his game and I think it's really complete. And I think that there's really some almost close to just about blue chip upside in this guy. And I'd be surprised if he was available because I think unlike, with Will Johnson, I don't think we got degenerative here on the back of him. I think it's, which was what Will was that's the dreaded term coming off of Johnson through the medicals. We don't have that with McCoy necessarily.
I feel like we didn't know that till after the draft though, because I still thought Will was going to be a top 10 pick even on draft day.
Yeah.
So we found out after the fact that this is really bad. So there may be something like that going on here too.
It's true. That's where the teams, you don't know until they let you know on those medicals what they had heard or gets leaked out. It always gets leaked out if that's the case.
Yeah, and I think McCoy's probably a little bit of a better prospect than Will Johnson. He's got a little more speed, a little bit more ability to athletically keep up. So,
Johnson was more of that off coverage zone guy to me. He was a little bit more of you want him in off coverage and then be reactive. And that's not a bad guy. I mean, there's a couple of corners in this draft that are good in that way. But just I like with our system and scheme, it's always about versatility. I need the guy that can come up and play press man. I need the guy that can be an off coverage end zone and can tackle all the way around. That's kind of the ideal you're looking for. It's hard to find, but they don't have to be great in any of those components necessarily for a Mike McDonald defense. You just need to be comfortable in running those kind of coverages in a McDonald defense.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues with McCoy is that he makes some mistakes in handing off routes in zone, but that's something he'll probably learn. He's very young, and he doesn't have a ton of college experience because he couldn't stay healthy. So I think that's going to get better, but he's got great ball skills. He's willing to throw his body around against the run. He flips his hips really well, click and close, explosive mover, knows how to read an offense. There's a lot to like here, and I get the blue chip thing. Again, I do wonder about the injury thing a little bit, but even with that red flag, and I do think it's a pretty serious red flag, I'd still probably take him in the top 12 if I were in charge. I'd still probably put him in the top 12 of this draft.
Well, to your point, I mean, you're looking for upside, right? And yeah, the risk is there, but this is where you fall back on your doctors and them looking at it. And it seems like now with the Johnson news and some of these other guys that have come out in recent years, Brendan, kind of does feel like these doctors are getting more along the alignment of being willing to tell these teams, hey, the thing's a ticking time bomb and it's going to blow. Or he got the ACL. It's going to be strapped up. It should be good. We've had guys we've drafted who've had torn ACLs in college, and it hasn't had us shy away. But if you're going to draft in the first round, the top 10, it does suck to be drafting for floor, doesn't it? You do want to be kind of shooting for that upside. And unfortunately, this is a draft with just guys that don't have a lot of necessarily upside across the board in that top 10. I mean, they do, but there's huge questions too. And I mean, with them, there's a little bit of safety to me as well. Like, if the ACL is fine, I have the safety of knowing this guy's going to be a damn fine corner. I don't know if he'll be a star, but I know I'm getting that bare minimum on it. There is no like necessarily bust factor to that.
Right. Right. So yeah, Jermon McCoy, love him. Would love to have him at 32. Kind of feel like it's not going to happen in this draft of all drafts.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. He's probably out in the top 15 in this draft, I would say. I'd be surprised. Though again, that Will Johnson thing could come up to where it's like, oh no, you don't want to touch that.
Yeah. Okay, so this next guy is another guy who I think is somewhat unlikely to be there for the Seahawks, but he did not have the best combine, so I think the door opened a little bit. Avion Terrell of Clemson, the Tigers, 21, and his issue is the measurements he got at the combine. He is sub 5'11", 186 pounds, 31-inch arms, very small hands. I don't know if we really care about hand size with cornerbacks, but maybe you do. I'd rather have bigger hands, I guess. I don't know.
It does help. I think it does help, especially when you're trying to reach in on a ball that's close, get an extra half inch in there. Mm-hmm. Probably does make a bit of a difference.
Yeah, and the one drill he did was the broad jump, and it was just okay, which is a bit of a problem to me when he's a smaller guy as is. But, I mean, he's certainly a highly touted prospect in this draft. His coverage numbers are quite good the last 2 years. Only 2 interceptions, but 21 passes defensed. Tell me what you think of Mr. Terrell.
I like Terrell a lot. I was kind of surprised to see the 34-inch vertical leap because on tape, even in my notes, I have in there that it looks like he's damn near close to a 40-inch vertical at times when he's playing the high point on balls.
So maybe having a bad day. Maybe just having a bad day.
I mean, some guys aren't testers, right? Some guys are growers. Some guys are showers, Brendan. You know what I mean? That's the way it rolls. So you've got in a guy with him. I think that you go back to the tape. I think they're going to have GPS times. They're going to show that he's plenty fast on tape. He is a guy that when we're talking about McCoy, this is the guy to the other side of that. That is that in that realm of like Will Johnson, where I do want him to be more often than not in off coverage, because it's where he's at his best. It's when you have these guys that are in off coverage, it's a little bit like, well, it's almost like a black mark against them or something because they can't come up and press and run with guys. But it's not as much that as it is that they're best to be in a reactive mode where they can kind of read things prior to the snap. They can read route concepts, and then they can make a kind of intuitive jump, if it were, on the play to get kind of an anticipation. I can't say the word, anticipation on the play, and allows them to jump routes, jump balls. This is part of why he makes so many plays on balls, is that he can kind of be a step ahead of things. But then when you put him in press, you kind of lose a little bit of that. Now he can do press. I don't think he's as good in man coverage situations. He's a little bit like that, his brother in that realm of things. But I just thought that his instincts, the good ball skills, the fact that, he can play so well in that concept, and that fits for so many teams like a Carolina Panthers, like they do with Mike Jackson, where it's off coverage, you sit, and you can really flourish in that role. I thought he was a really good run defender, in the same anticipation that allows him in coverage to kind of feel the route coming, allows him to get up on the run game and get there a hair step early at times. And I thought it was very impressive as a player. I did put a first round grade at him back into the first round. I would say as a first round grade for him, I wouldn't put anything but he's going to probably go up ahead of us. If he did land on us, be a very interesting guy for Mike to look at. Does he do the press stuff well enough? Does he do the man coverage stuff well enough for you? If the answer is yes for Mike, then he would definitely be in play as the pick.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind here is that he did play inside some in college, I believe. So he can do it. This is not a Delane situation.
Yes.
And he's also a very hard hitter. He forces a lot of fumbles. I think he's forced like 9 fumbles over the last 2 years. He really has a knack for that. So I know the interceptions are not there, but he kind of makes up for it with the forced fumbles in a way. He's still forcing turnovers.
And the ball skills are there with him. Well, like the head does get back around, does get his hand on balls. Maybe he's got a little bit of cornerback hands for the position. That'd be a fair critique, I guess. But like you say, there's some extra stuff here you're getting on him with some of the questions, as is the tackler, as he is a hitter, willingness as a run defender. And, the instincts you can't teach sometimes. When you've got that natural intuition for where the play is going, where a route's going, it's kind of, you got that or you don't a little bit in your game. And so you also got the track record of him having the bloodlines where his brothers played, really well for the Falcons and turned himself into a really good corner, and very similar as his brother as far as not just a track record of bloodlines here, Brendan, but it gives you a very similar player as far as a baseline if he does the same sort of stuff. Like Terrell has learned to play better in press man situations, but he came in the league as really keep him in off coverage, keep him in cover 3. That's where you want him living. So you see the growth pattern from the bloodlines there, and the success of the bloodlines there, which I'm not saying it should be a huge factor into this, but I think it is a little bit of a factor. It's a little bit like what you got with James Cook to Dalvin Cook, right? Where
Right.
like Dalvin and they both had the same kind of running style with their feet, those typewriter feet and their ability to just always keep the feet moving. And you went, well, that worked with that guy, and this guy's almost very similarly built. So why wouldn't it work?
Yeah. So I'm a little concerned about his ability to play outside, which is a problem because we're pretty loaded at slot corner. We don't need another one of those guys. Although some people are saying that Eman Wari could play outside corner at some point, maybe, which that would be interesting. He certainly has the size for it. But
Yeah, I mean, you want to keep him where he is, though, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I
you don't want
do.
to move him out of. Yeah, we don't want to move him out of there.
Yeah. But there is some stuff to work on. Like, I don't think he's a great press corner, and maybe that's okay. But it depends on what Mike wants, and that's kind of the variable here. It's hard to know what Mike wants sometimes because it's not like Pete. We knew exactly what Pete wanted because he had been here for a million years. Mike,
Yeah.
I feel like we don't know everything yet. Like he still has the capacity to surprise you with what he ends up wanting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've brought in Eamon Wari, but that's kind of a known unique piece there. It's not really a baseline of player that you can look for, to your point. You have gotten into Josh Jobe, and that's where when I'm making the guesses about looking for a man press, off coverage zone guy, like you want a little bit of the full meal deal. And Jobe is like a really good baseline because he's not a sensational player. He's just a solid player that's very comfortable in all of those type of coverages. And that is where, to your point, back to the press and the man, is there a little bit of there that would have them shying away from it at that point, or be enough to shy them away? We'll learn about that. We are in that learning stage with Mike and this defense and those type of players. He is, I've got the same wonder a little bit about the edge, and like, are we going to stick to more power edges now? And so the flashier take the edge kind of guys are now kind of off the table. It's just kind of a theory I have, but we're going to see how it plays through in this draft and this offseason, get a little bit more solidity there.
Yeah. So I feel like Terrell should probably be somewhere around like 25, 26 in this draft. I still feel like he's a first round pick.
Yeah, another guy would be on the Kansas City radar, variety of teams radar that are playoff teams, that plug and play starter that can, especially an off coverage zone team, you jump right on top of him with 2 feet. So I don't think he does last to us, but I could also see us being interested in him. I think your worry about the slot stuff is valid though, because a fourth of his snaps last year operated out of the slot. So that is more than just a baseline. That is a little bit of a tendency, shift. And if they're starting to do it in college, it's like, all right, is that all where you're at as a pro? But we'll see, especially without the testing times, especially without that 4.4 to kind of give you that warm and fuzzy feeling at night as you go to bed as an evaluator.
Right. Okay, so now we're going to get into guys that I think will definitely be there at 32, or at least more likely than not. So that was kind of your first round group. This is kind of now roughly second round group we're segueing into here. So Colton Hood's going to kick us off here, the Tennessee corner that actually played this last year. Also 21, pretty decent size, little under 6 feet, 193 pounds, decent arm length, kind of in the middle as far as measurements go in terms of percentile. And he tested, I mean, the 40 yarder is fine. 10-yard split, not so much. The vert was great. The broad was good. So the testing is a little bit mixed, but more good than bad. What do you think of Colton Hood?
Yeah, he's probably been my kind of. I think Chris Johnson's the one that is sort of the de facto guy that most Hawk fans kind of gravitate towards at our pick there from the guys that'll be likely options at the spot. I think he has still kind of been my guy that I still gravitate a little bit more so too. I think that he's very comfortable in running the variety of different coverages we want to run. He is at his best press, staying in the hip pocket of the receiver, running step for step with that receiver and just being tight in coverage. But I thought that he showed up in zone. I thought he showed up in off coverage really well with some really good instincts there. And a good feel for the quarterback's eyes, drifting in the right spot in coverage to where the quarterback's going when he was in zone situations. I thought he was very willing as a tackler in the running game. I think he also plays bigger than his size. We're looking at guys that are at 100 and bob at a bob, 188 pounds or whatever. This guy plays like a little over 200 pounds out there. And I thought that he is the kind of guy that just sort of wears a receiver down over the course of the game, just kind of leaning on him. I didn't think he was overly physical or that he was being grabby like a lot of corners are at the college level. He's being legally physical down the field and what he's doing with those guys. And he's just like a 15-pound weight on your back as a receiver because of it. And it's almost a little like Sherman-like, where it's just like, it's not the pull and the grab stuff. It's the I'm leaning on you stuff as you go up the field. I'm cutting your route off and making take extra steps around me. I like how he plays, and I like his ball skills. I think that he's a guy that, really has some good ability as far as upper end to take away the ball, and liked what he did with that. Felt like he's a very complete player, a lot of very low catch rate percentage this last year, really grown as a player, I thought, over his time there. Yeah, I like him a lot at the second round.
Yeah, I feel like he's meant to be in a press-heavy scheme because he's so physical, and he does seem to love to really get in a receiver's grill. I really like his press, really like how he tackles. And unlike some of these other press corners that are slow, he's actually got the speed to hang with long developing routes. So he's also proven capable in zone. So this should be a relatively flexible player. I think he's kind of wasted unless you're going to do a lot of press, personally. His trigger on his click and close is good as well. I think he flips his hips a little too early sometimes. Like he'll act like he'll bite on the vertical route and then the route gets broken off and he's not in a great position to pick it up. I think faster and quicker receivers might give him some issues. You might need to, the better route runners out there. And his instincts are still improving. I don't mind that because he's 21 years old, but it is worth noting. So I think I would value him in about the early second, and whether or not I want him just depends on whether McDonald feels like this is the kind of corner he wants. And I don't know if that's the case or not, but I would say early second's about right.
Yeah, it's a lot. Some people have been wondering about where an outside corner could come from who's got size to replicate some of what Woolen can do with his length and size on the outside. And while this guy's just 6 feet tall, I think with some of the physical stuff, he could supply some of that to the outside uniquely in this draft from some of the other corners that are a little more finesse.
Mm-hmm. So I would say that I'm a fan. If we pick him at 32, I'm good with that because I trust that McDonald wouldn't take him unless he understood what he was getting. But value seems about right.
Yeah, I'd have no issue here at all with. I'd celebrate the pick for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this next one I'm going to just say is a little bit unfair because for me anyway, so just mentally prepare for this because I posted the video where I talked about Brandon Cisse on X several days ago because I repost all my videos to X now as kind of a backup. And Brandon Cisse liked the tweet. So I was okay, now we have to take him. Right? Like now that we have to. We have no choice. So keep that in mind as we talk about Brandon Cisse here. But South Carolina, 21 years old. He did not play with Eman Wari because he transferred last season. But they do seem to have a relationship there. They do seem to have an appreciation. I think that Cisse might have been at the parade or something, actually.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
So pretty well sized. Arms are a little bit short, but again, we don't know if we care about that because of the nature of this year's combine. Very small hands. There was also, I think, a question about whether or not they were measuring hands properly at the combine. I seem to remember that, but I don't know. And the little bit that he did at the combine was great. He is very explosive. 41-inch vert, almost 11-foot broad, monstrous. What do you think of Mr. Cisse?
So, Brendan, South Carolina has been producing these kind of outside cornerbacks for a lot of years. Another one of these guys with just, smooth athleticism, explosiveness that you can see from the testing times, easy speed. Don't really need the 40 on this guy. I know he can run with just about anybody. Always feels tight on the receiver. Stop and start, change of direction, all really good, really good. I wouldn't put a lead on anything, but just everything is really ticks the box of being a very good top end for what you typically get for a prospect in that manner. So a guy that I think transferred just to South Carolina here recently last year, I want to say, or I can't remember if he was there all 3 years, but real complete player. Another guy that I think, much like Colton here, with there's some real ability to go in press and off coverage. I think that he's pretty comfortable in each. He's not going to be the bully Colton is at the line of scrimmage with the press stuff, but he's capable in doing it. All around good cornerback, and when he brings the versatility that Mike would like, he does bring to the table. He will get off blocks. He's got good run stinks in the run game, and he'll get up and make the tackle. He's a willing tackler in that way. So a very complete corner here. Another one of those guys that's just sort of a no issues with the type of pick if you're going to take him at 32 from my perspective, because I don't think that he's got a lot of holes to his game. I do think he's a real pure fit to this defense. Don't think he's going to, the small hands may come into fact, and that you don't see, I think, him taking a lot of balls away. I don't think maybe an interceptor at the next level. He has really good ball tracking, and he has a good way of anticipating the ball coming in to where he can dislodge it at the catch point. But he's not really going to be a guy that's going to turn around and go pick it off a lot at the next level, in my opinion, which is okay. It's not a requirement, especially if you're complete through the rest of your game as a cornerback.
Yeah, our 3 top corners last year had 1 interception each last season, and we won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's not a the more of the requirement is the versatility, I would argue, than ball skills.
Right. So one thing about Cisse, and I know this sounds like a problem, is that I think his man coverage is ahead of his zone coverage right now. He's better in man right now, but I think he's going to get better quickly. I do. I feel like he's going to become a good zone corner if you give him time and experience. So I'm not worried about it. He's got straight line speed. He can keep up downfield in man. He's also got good click and close. He's a great run supporter. I think McDonald's going to love that. Smooth hips, works through blockers well. Just needs to develop a little cerebrally and in terms of being able to read a play as he's watching it. And also just maybe learn how to wrap up a little bit better. I feel like sometimes he goes for the decleater instead of the clean tackle. But I'm a big fan. Right now, I think it's an imperfect union because of McDonald's zone heavy scheme, but I think Cisse will learn quickly and it won't be a problem. So I put a first round grade on him. I think he's a late first rounder in my book.
He's getting that like bump.
Mm-hmm.
The Brendan Nelson bump.
Yeah, I had to do it. Yeah, it's always kind of interesting, right? Because it's not the first time. I remember there was I think an edge rusher on the Cougars who I made a video about, I want to say last year. I think his name was Brennan Jackson. Do you remember him at all?
Oh, yeah.
He actually DM'd me on X when I posted a video talking in part about him as a draft prospect.
Oh, nice. Was he kind?
Yeah, he was like, hey, I great your video. I watched it. I wanted to know, if there was anything specific you saw, any particular examples of the things that you're talking about in your video, both positive and negative about my game. It was interesting.
That's cool. No, that's awesome.
Yeah. X is a DM platform is really, really bad though. So you don't find out about this stuff sometimes. Like you don't get, I don't get notifications when I get messages. So sometimes it's like, oh, this guy messaged me 3 months ago. That would have been interesting to know about back then.
Oh, I know. I don't know why it's so, their search functionality and their messaging is so wonky on that platform for some reason.
Yeah.
Don't get it.
Yeah. All right. So Brandon Cisse, love him. If we get him at 32, I am pretty excited about that.
Me as well. I think he'd be another one of those just real solid picks.
Okay. Next up is going to be Chris Johnson of San Diego State. This is the guy that I feel like Seahawks fans are really circling the wagons around because he's such a pure fit for this defense. 21 years old, pretty good size, 6 feet, over 190 pounds. Arm length, a little bit short, but not crucially short, and nice big hands. And unlike a lot of these guys, he actually ran at the combine, ran a 4.4. Not a great 10-yard split, but he's fast, and he had a good broad as well. So, Chris Johnson, what's your read on this one?
154 is pretty good. You're 154. You're on the top top end of it.
Yeah, it's okay.
I think he's a very solid cornerback. Took a little bit of time with him on the evaluation. Technically, very impressive all around guy. He's got impeccable footwork. He's always going to keep his feet and his hips, and he's going to keep himself the right angle to be change direction, to be able to just have his base underneath him, to not be kind of over his skis a little bit. Very impressive in that way. Smooth back pedal, dancer's feet. Capable and press, but he's best suited, I think, in off coverage, where he seems to read both the quarterback's eyes and route combinations in tandem really well, which allows him that anticipation that we spoke about here on the prior player a second ago. He's kind of similar in that way. This has given him an opportunity with that anticipation to go get some pick sixes and to jump routes. This guy's actually a potential real high upside guy as far as the interceptions and taking away the ball versus some of the other guys we've looked at in this draft. I think that part does stand out. While he is capable and press man, his footwork doesn't quite hold up as well or tightly as when he's got those smooth drop back pedals off of the off coverage into zone where he can react on things and really jump, kind of Terrell-like in that way a little bit. Average ball skills, average at getting off blocks, average in, I think, the run game. He was the second highest graded player in college football at the cornerback position last year, or whatever you want to give that. He is a top flight gunner on kickoffs, a real killer on special teams. So I think that's a part that to keep in mind with this too, is that this does come down to a couple cornerbacks that are all lined up evenly here on the board at 32 for Seattle. This may be the factor that pushes Chris, past the finish line to be the pick. But I thought he was a very complete corner otherwise. Didn't see him do a lot out at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he was fine out there, but he didn't flash a bunch for me in watching him out there, which I had kind of hoped with him coming from San Jose State as a smaller college. But testing number shows that he's got the legit goods physically to hold up doing it, and I think he's enough of a complete corner to get the job done out there.
Yeah, my best friend actually attended San Diego State, so it's kind of cool if we ended up with a player from there as his as our first round pick, which is what I think it would take. Well, he doesn't watch college football, but he was attending there as a student. So
okay, I see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'm a fan. I like him a lot. Very versatile. Reads routes really well. His ball tracking skills are good. I think he's also a guy who already understands how to not draw penalties, because it's a little easier to get away with stuff in college. So a lot of these corners will do stuff in college because they can get away with it. Then they get to the pros and find out they can't get away with it. This guy, I feel like, has an understanding already of how to play the right way. His footwork is very good, which allows him to make up for mistakes. I think bigger receivers will posterize him a little bit. He's not great at beating size. Sometimes he bites a tiny bit early on vertical routes. I don't know about him in press so much, but I think that he'll be great in a zone-heavy scheme, which is what we run. I think he'll be great for Mike McDonald. And the 2025 season, he got targeted 43 times and allowed 185 yards, which is like 4 yards a target. Really phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So I feel like he's a top 25 player in this draft. So if he's there at 32, I'm jumping on that all day.
Yeah, I think he's a high floor guy that gives you also then some upside for the interception side of it, where if this guy has 5-6 interceptions in a season for a couple of years of his pro career, wouldn't shock me. But I do think he's a guy that's probably more of a high floor guy that you get to quickly more than he's going to be a ceiling guy. And so I do see some of that where it's like he's a bit of the plug and play type guys. He fits into that class. So I do have him in the second round. I would have no issues at 32. Certainly well within reason for where he should be selected. And with all these guys having a little bit of separate differentiations between them, Brendan, but knowing corners in need, knowing that might be the pick there, and knowing the guys that'll be available there, we will get back to a little bit of more of understanding of the type of cornerback they're seeking out, I think, a little bit because of the slight differences in these guys. But he's fun. Right. He's a good player. I can understand why Seattle fans are gravitate towards him in a big way. And I think he'd be a guy that could get on the field very quickly for you, not to mention helping out that special teams unit.
Mm. All right. We got a few more donos here. I want to jump on the Warhammer guy, $1.99. Would y'all rather go corner in the first or second? I think now's a good time to explore this question because we just kind of went over the logical options in the first, and the logical options are in the second are still kind of coming up here. But I tend to really gravitate towards doing it in the first more so than the second personally.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. First off, Warhammer guy, because there's not an easy answer here. Some of it has to do with that from my perspective on this, we come back to value and what are the options that I have sitting in the first round for me when I'm picking at 32 around these corners. I know a couple of the guys we're just recently talking about, they're going to be there and available on the board. Don't have any problem taking them. But does a guy fall in the first round? Is there a player that lands in our lap at 32nd who has no business being at 32nd, who I've got a higher grade on from a value-based chart? That's where it could drive me to do that. And I think that while I love living in the value realm, I don't think that you can ignore the fact that this cornerback class has a lot of similarity to it with prospect by prospect, being that there's a lot of versatility and there's a lot of solidity on the floor of these cornerback prospects in day one and day two. You're missing some of the ceiling. And so in knowing that that's the same in a lot of ways at the end of the first round, at the end of the second round, that's kind of the same formula I'm facing, whether I pick it early or late. That drives me back around to the high value point on that first round pick of who's just the best guy I got on the board. And if it's a edge that I've got, or if it's dunker there, I got, that's the one that I'm going to jump for over the corner, knowing I can come back around that second round and there's going to be a guy there.
Yeah, I just look at the guys we could get at 64 because that's the thing to keep in mind. We have the last pick in the second round. If we go at 64, the guys we get, there are significant problems for one reason or another. For the most part, I feel like that I don't see with a guy like Cisse or even Chris Johnson. And I'd go Colton Hood in there as well, Avion Terrell. It feels very different to me.
Yeah, you're definitely taking there's more of the risk that you're not going to get maybe as much. I think that there's also those guys though have potential too. There's upside too with them. There's the question with them as well, but there is that upside there too. Malik Muhammad, a Dalen Everett, a Keith Abney, a D'Angelo Pons, a Chandler Rivers, who did stand out by the way at Senior Bowl when Chris Johnson was kind of quiet. Chandler Rivers, who did play at the Senior Bowl inside and outside and looked really good when Johnson didn't do a whole lot. Those guys, yeah, you're right about there's questions to them, but there's also as much of the potential there as well with it on some of these guys too. So there's the flip side of that. Yeah, I mean, we can play the tit for tat game there on that, but that's where this could come into play too. And if I'm getting a difference maker with the first round pick because I didn't, for that slight marginal difference between these cornerbacks, I get the difference maker with the first round pick. I think that's the smarter way to go.
Yeah. I'm going to be open-minded here. I'm not trying to lock myself into a position in each slot of the draft. Like I'll go that far. Like, believe me, I'm not trying to improvise based on what's there at 32.
I've got essentially for where we would be picking inside 32, though I've got a couple third round grades in here. We're kind of picking, if you think about it, with that second round pick at the top of the third round. But I think if I just take the numbers game on this, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I got 11 guys that I would have inside of our second round pick of worthy grades basically to be picked in there. In that, if at that point, knowing any one of those guys that lands into us at 32 and saying, here's a guy that's going to be in there to duke it out with Nehemiah Pritchett and Mahogany, then I'm going to feel okay with that. I'm going to feel like they can give up a good battle. I maybe don't have as much certainty, but I definitely have I'm putting some talent in there and it's enough to kind of lodge it up. And it's all falls back in the realm of this is the name of value to me. It's really about more than getting the cornerback replacement for Woolen here. It's making sure we maximize the value front of the draft. And that's why I want to stay really, really open-minded on that first pick to it being who's landing in my lap? Who are we talking about here? Who's the guy? Do I have a guy that John's looking at and saying, this guy's got all pro upside? And I'm passing on that to take the cornerback who's got a marginal little bit of certainty in what he brings to the table versus the guy that I get back in the end of that second round.
Alex, 499. Do you guys think cornerback is the most likely position that gets taken at 32, or is there a chance they go any other direction? If so, what? Okay, so what do you think? This is a tough one.
So there's definitely a place where, because there's so many of these cornerbacks here that we like at the top of 32, both me and Brendan, I think we would definitely say to you, hey, look, the value here could be to where Seattle loves Colton Hood, loves Brandon Cisse, looks at Brandon Cisse and says, here's a guy that's our best, highest graded player on the board, and corner's kind of a sub need. Corner, it doesn't have to always be that the guy that you're looking at value wise is for a position that's well stocked up and you're putting like a Riley Mills on top of your 3 techs. You don't have to always be facing that decision. Sometimes it's beautifully set up to where you can just simply get the guy that's going to fill into the need. And Seattle might be facing that. But if we're talking about droppers here, Brendan, I could see this team loving Caden McDonald. I could see this team loving Anthony Hill. I know people go, Anthony Hill, Another guy that's a pup at 20 years old. You're looking a little bit of a long-term view of the position a bit there. You probably are moving Knight at that point for some like back end day 3 situation. He's not going to probably remain on the roster.
Yeah, CJ Allen's 20. He'll be 20 when the season starts,
Yeah.
I think. So
CJ Allen, another kind of guy with it, where the value could be there, where they look at the board and say it's just too good for us not to jump there. Potentially an offensive lineman like a Jennings Dunker. I think really confidently that John Schneider, more than any year in covering John for this channel, I have more confidence now than ever before that John Schneider, with the very first pick, especially in this draft, is going to be living in value. I do not think that he is going to start reaching for a need right now after he's, number one, had so much success the past 3 years, living in this mode 100%, and also understanding that it was a transition of living into this mode 100% of the time when he had been deviating from that in the late 2010s and the early 2020s to such failure within those drafts. I just don't think he's going to unlearn this lesson, unring this bell. And if that's the case, then I think it's going to be all about value when you come up to 32.
yeah, I think corner is more likely than any other position, but I wouldn't say it's a favorite against the field. I think there's room for edge. I think there's room for, I guess, running back, although, I mean, a lot of people are really starting to circle Jadarian Price at 32, which I have a little bit of a hard time with. I'm not, that would kind of feel like the opposite of what you're talking about, but I understand why people are saying it. Linebacker, even like wide receiver, as much as that seems impossible to us right now, what if there's some top 15 wide receiver that's there at 32? I don't know if John passes that up just because of the rest of the roster.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to where they may have a valuation grade on a particular player, even outside of where we're at, looking at a guys that this guy just we love, and we've got this super high grade on him, and it's well above the next guy below him. How can we not jump? An Omar Cooper Jr., for instance, you mentioned. Like a guy like that could be a type I could see them to the receiver position being like, ooh, even though it's not a need, even though this guy's going to be sitting deep on the depth chart, still just like him so much, just can't take a pass on him. And a guy named Omar Cooper is probably a slot guy, but Cooper Kupp maybe going the final year of his deal. And, you don't want to move Jackson Smith long-term back to the inside. You want to keep him on the outside. So, it's kind of all in play. We'll learn on that. I'm still struggling, Brendan. Even after our show last week, I've gone back and looked back at Jadarian Price, and I've gone back and tried to listen to a lot of smart people talk about him and that they really love his game with it. And I do just keep coming back to like, he runs like a guy that should be 220. At his size, he should be a little bit more, and maybe it's just the game tape is where it's like he's field fast and not testing fast, but I still just sometimes feel on the field even that there's just sometimes a little bit less natural early explosion there to his game that fits in alignment with that 1-6, 10-yard split. It just gets me nervous, especially at the end of the first round. I'm not hating on him if it's picked. I'm not going to be mad. Just it does have me at this state of things in the evaluation process nervous when looking at him at that place.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Kyle, thank you for the 20 over on Kyle,
you're awesome, man.
I agree the Rams should look at trading Nakua, but realistically, what will they get in return? Dude is already a head case off field and emotional on field. Not a lot of teams will trade significant picks and pay 40 to 45 million. The Cleveland Browns.
I get what you're saying, but like history has kind of told us that there's always going to be, it just takes one team that's willing to say we'll overlook that and we'll throw it. The Tennessee Titans have $63 million of cap space right now. The Commanders have $50 million of cap space right now. The Jets got $39 million of cap space. We don't think the Jets would be willing to throw a first and a second round pick to go get Puka Nacua and put him there with Garrett Wilson. I think that Patriots, $35 million. Like they're looking for a receiver. They're trying to look at A.J. Brown, but the Eagles are trying to want too much for A.J. Brown. Well, what about this instead? Younger player, been more productive recently, kind of would fit into that offense pretty well. Be a nice little puzzle piece to go give Drake May. So, I think that there would be, I don't think there'd be like a line of teams that would be like 10 teams, but I think that there would be like 3 or 4 teams that'd be very serious about it. And I think that you're not going to get some like this like blue chip pick back for the Rams, but can you get a mid first round pick and a mid second round pick right now for him? Maybe. Yeah. I mean, these guys coming off of a year where it's like, remember with him, he's matched JSN's receiving season. He also is a guy that can take carries out of the backfield. He's a good bubble screen guy. And he's also a guy that blocks his ass off. So it's like you're getting kind of the full meal deal of a wide receiver at the position there. So, I could. Yeah, I kind of could.
Yeah, somebody will do it. We've learned somebody will do it. Again, like I brought up the Cleveland Browns as kind of a joke, but the fact that they did what they did to get Deshaun Watson shows you that people will, teams that are desperate will go for it. Although I guess the Browns don't have the guy that architected the Deshaun Watson trade on their front office anymore. Yeah, have you heard about that? He's working with the Rockies now.
Yeah, well, he came for baseball originally, so
Yeah.
he's going back. It was a weird hire at the time. They were trying to
Yeah.
go into the analytics age or something and fully be ahead of everybody on that,
Yeah,
by bringing in a baseball guy.
By the way, guys, that's a really funny story. You guys should check that out. He is the architect of Moneyball, and since he left Oakland in the early 2000s, he's been a train wreck everywhere he's been. He's been terrible.
He's Jonah Hill.
Yeah, Jonah Hill. Although he demanded they changed his name when he saw the movie, because he was like that when he saw what they were going to do with his character. Because he's like, I'm not a nerd. I'm an athlete. I played football and baseball in college. Like he actually was like, you cannot put my name on this fat nerd that you have playing me. Funny story. It's a true one. Check that out. It's pretty amusing.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Misfit, thank you for the member message. Nickel, 5 cornerbacks, more than 85%. Spoon, Job, Nick, Love, in parentheses, Okada. I don't know if we're going to be 85% in nickel. That would break some kind of record, I think, but it's going to be high. Like 85%. What were we last year? 70 something?
I can't remember, to be honest with you. I forget on that front of it. I definitely think they're trying to misfit. They'd love to ideally angle into that area of it, to getting to that spot of it. So that'd be what the hopeful is, and why you got to reinforce the quarterback room is if you're going to live in nickel this much and have that many guys on the field that often, much more susceptibility to injury. And so got to have the depth there to be able to bring guys out when the injury strikes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is worth noting, I know Woolen has great coverage numbers, but for whatever reason, the team did see it fit to rotate Job out the whole season. They never let him play every snap in a game unless somebody was hurt. So clearly, while they like him, they maybe see some reason why he shouldn't be an every down player.
Yeah, I think that they found a rotation and Mike's embraced that. So another reason you might be able to fit guys into certain roles on certain down and distances too. Not to mention just get specialized in the packaging, right? Like I run these packages, I master these packages. You're running in outside corner in these packages, and you're mastering those. And with all of the nuance and details within this defense, it makes sense that you might have to do that a little bit because there is so many moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
So much stuff to learn.
Right. All right. So now we're kind of getting down into guys that are more like second round, maybe even third round guys here. And this first guy, I do want to talk about a little bit because he is one of the most fascinating players in this draft to Seahawks fans. I know you didn't have him on your list. We did talk about him a little bit, but D'Angelo Pons is the man's name. And playing on the outside, despite being very, very small, is his game. Indiana, so national champions, congratulations to him, of course. But yeah, not even 5'9", 182, baby arms. He's got little stubs for arms. I think Ruben Bain could probably take this guy out pretty easily. He did one thing at the combine, and what he did was insane. He almost vert jumped 44 inches, which is damn near the record for the position. Currently projected to be like a mid second round pick, might slip to 64 in some world. And I think there are a lot of Seahawks fans that would be very, very conflicted if he was there at 64. So what side of the conflict are you on?
I'm probably a little bit more to the dismayed side because I do think he's got to transition into probably the slot at the pro level. Slots are becoming more important, like slot receivers are becoming more important. And I think a big part of him jumping at the combine had to do with him trying to sell the dream on NFL teams. I can play on the outside against bigger receivers. I can go up against a Drake London and I can high point a ball because though I'm missing the size, I can jump up there and reach that high point that he can't jump as high. He might have the length and I can kind of, close the distance between the two to actually disrupt the catch point. I think that he was able to do that in college a lot. I think that it's not just a jumping ability, but there's ball skills and ball tracking and an ability to anticipate that type of stuff. He plays with a spirit that's very Seahawk-like in that, very good tackler, very just, reckless kind of spirit, like the same kind of thing you get with a Witherspoon at times and how he'll go out and play the run really stands out at his size and that he'll throw things around and get after in that manner. But I do think that I look back at the track record of things. I've got like a Brett, and this is going back for a few years now, but I got Brett Grimes at 5'8", playing on the outside and able to do it. And he likewise, Brett Grimes could jump through the roof. That's how he was able to get it done, is he had great ball skills and he could get up there on those bigger receivers and actually compete. But I just think, man, that's more of an anomaly. You know me with anomalies and looking for the rules outside the thumb is that, do I want to draft a player that I'm counting on to be the anomaly, or do I want to draft players that are more in alignment with understanding that the rules of thumb are rule of thumbs for a reason? And if he's going to go to be a slot only kind of guy, and I've taken that now in the second round, I've potentially now taken a guy that's going to be sitting on the bench, not out there playing, because I've got Imanwari out there, and it just becomes Imanwari insurance at that point.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's a lot smaller than even DJ Reed, right? And DJ Reed was like the guy who you weren't sure if he could play outside, but he ended up being able to do it pretty well. This is different. This is beyond even that. Great player, a lot of fun, but it's just hard to imagine this working out on the outside in the NFL. It's an extreme that is kind of hard for me to get my head around.
I'm struggling with it too. I love him as a player, his feisty spirit, combative attitude in a good way, just part of what made that Indiana defense really good and what they did. No doubt about that. But just at that size for what we need, and we're really looking at right now, to me, an outside corner here. You've got Imanwari, you've got Witherspoon as a backup to be bumped inside if that happens, and you can keep that position playing at a high level because of that. I look more of that outsides of the corners, the one that I need to zero in on and know that I'm getting that quantity from this draft if I'm making a pick at that position, especially if I'm making a pick at that position in day 1 or 2.
Right. So yeah, I like him. Just can't pick them. That's how I feel.
Third round pick for me, third round valuation for me too. So, you're picking him, you're picking him at the end of the third round from my perspective. If that were, that's where we're taking him. So I like him too. I think he'll be picked earlier than that. I can see why a team would like him in the second round, saying, hey, these slot corners are becoming more standard issue. You need them. So if somebody takes him to become that guy, we saw this with the Michigan kid, Sane Rastrill, who was even taller than this a couple of years ago, being drafted specifically just to be that slot only guy in day 2.
Right. All right. So next guy, this is another guy who might be there in the second round at 64. It's Keith Abney II of Arizona State. I've even seen a couple mocks giving him to the Seahawks in the first round, which I don't know how I feel about that, but 21 years old, he's small, not tiny, but small, short arms, didn't do anything at the combine. Aggregate puts him in the late second right now. He's coming off a really good season at Arizona State. He averaged like 4 yards per target allowed, 12 passes defensed. So give me the skinny on Keith Abney.
I think people connecting him to Seattle makes a lot of sense because of what he played at Arizona State, off coverage, outside zone. He has a solid all-around game, good quickness. Speed's probably in the average 4.5-ish range. I know we don't have the 40 time on tape. It looks about 4.5-ish to me. Change of direction is above average, so it stands out there. So off coverage guy, reactive, jumping on routes, feeling the route concepts like a couple of these other guys. There's some similarities to there in what he does, though there's some inherent differences in what he brings too, I think, as well. He's really good about reading the quarterback's eyes, competitive at the catch point, so not just reading their route concepts, but able to drive on routes. And then what I think partly sets him aside in difference here is that, he gets up and he's going to, when he presses, he's not pressing there as like a necessary evil of lower, like, oh, you guys are asking me to do this now. I want to stay in off coverage and zone. Like on, quite frankly, a couple other guys in this draft, even higher up in this draft than where he's at, he will get up there and you're in a barroom fight with him throughout the course of the game, anytime he's up in press. And so you have this guy that actually does have that versatility inherently there, where it's a little bit so much, I'm not going to lie, Brennan, he goes a little hard sometimes.
Yeah.
So, I get that, but I like the spirit because, again, I think a lot of times you get the finesse corner on outside zone gets up there and press, and they're kind of like, I don't want to do it. It's really hard. It hurts my hands. He gets up there and he really gets after it. So I think he gives you some universal ability all the way around. I think I like his size and what he brought there. Good. He's legit 6 feet, legit 190 pounds, just solid. Good. I think good floor on this guy. Do think he's going to probably need to live a little bit more in his own, but occasionally you can throw him in kind of the man press situations. It's just kind of a curveball. I think he's a strong tackler as well. I think that's an overall real plus of his game. So I did put a late second round pick on this guy because I think there's functional ball skills there. There's an ability to play a couple different coverage types and be comfortable in each. Fits the defense with the rally to the ball kind of attitude that Mike's going to look for from his cornerbacks. But I like Keith Abney quite a bit.
Yeah, I went late second too. I agree with everything you're saying. The press is nasty. He is a very physical player, and he's smart too. There was one scouting report I read on him that said something like he's like a hitter in the box waiting for his pitch to tee off on. When it comes to some of these routes, he's just waiting for his route to jump. So smart, ball skills, good tackler, and I think he can be an inside guy at the next level if he needs to be. Now, the question is more, can he be an outside guy because he's small? But I think he can. I'm a little more amenable to it here than I am with Pons because it's not as extreme. And even though the arms are short, I feel like he can probably do it. So late second seems fine to me. I like him. Seems like a pretty good pick. This is, if we don't go corner in the first, this may end up being my dude in the second.
Wouldn't have any issue with it as well. And I think the arms are short, but like the other guy we looked at who had 30-inch arms, just didn't really feel it a lot on tape. I mean, if the arms are being short, I also want to feel it on tape. Like go back to that tackle and Will Campbell, the build up to the playoff game, that Super Bowl. It's like, well, you could see through the playoffs. The short arms are showing up on tape. Guys are getting into his chest and throwing them around off the chest, and his little hands are just tickling their titties. And he couldn't get him on there. So Keith just didn't feel like you felt like that within the tape, especially with how he was asked to run press man. They didn't just protect the short arms and off coverage all the time. He did have to get up there and get his arms into those guys, and he was willing.
All right. So next guy, this is going to be another probable slot corner guy, even though he's really not that small, but this is what he did in college. So I feel like it's going to be the case in the NFL. Keontae Scott of the almost national champion Miami Hurricanes, already 25. So this is like our first guy we're talking about today that's already at an advanced age. He's decently well-sized overall. He's got the big hands. He's got decent length. But he was a nickel corner in college, so I feel like that's probably what he's going to be in the NFL. Very interesting player here. He is the best blitzer by a wide margin in this class, I think. He is a wizard against the run. He averages like 1 tackle for loss a game. But do you see anything here that you like with Keontae?
I really don't, because like you said, on the reasons, it is I mean, I do in the respect of he's a second round graded guy, and that he's got legitimate talent. I mean, first off, he is 25 years old. So these older prospects, the die is cast, the sun is set. He is who he is going to be as a player. Now, that's not a bad thing. He's a spark plug, tenacious. He's your, Brian Branchian kind of slot corners, that are just hyper physical. They can play the slot like a linebacker, like Witherspoon does when he's in there at times, and that this guy doesn't have necessarily the juice or the electricity on the lower half, like, some of those other two guys. But I think that he does have some things that are close in certain ways. And he has exactly the type of spirit and mentality you want from the slot in the modern era, specifically being tight in coverage, twitchy, able to run step for step with guys from that spot, but also able to run that blitz and able to fight off blocks and able to go in there and be a vicious, violent tackler. And I think he brings all those to the table, which is going to make him of more value, I think, to another team. One of those guys you're kind of, from my perspective, Brendan, hoping he gets taken. There's those hope they get taken guys ahead of you in the second round. Like, I'd like to see this guy off the board go to somebody. Like, let a Christian Miller go to somebody else out there. Let a Romello hike go to this team up there in the top of the second round to somebody else. Have us drop a guy a little bit more, a little more beefier down to our side.
Right. I'm a little worried about his coverage abilities. I don't think he's a great reader of passing plays yet. I think that he struggles to get back in the play when he's get beaten. So I'm not a huge fan of his coverage abilities. I think that he is almost like a linebacker out there with how he stops the run and blitzes. And that's great. But yeah, he's awesome. I like him a lot. I just don't want him really that much. I take him in the late second, early third, but only if he fits what you're getting out of him. It's just one of those things. And also, he's 25. He's close to his ceiling already. There's not going to be a lot of improvements he can make.
Yeah, he's a you take him guy. That's what I'm going to start calling these guys. He's a you take him. No, you take him.
Right. Let's see here. Alex, thank you for the $4.99. Draft grade aside, who in each of your opinions is the best fit cornerback in this class? I probably would just say McCoy because I think he'd be the best fit pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, McCoy, because he gives you the rare. None of these guys to me have star upside. They just don't. They have really solid floors, and the floors. I mean, when you talk solid floors, people kind of like roll their eyes, I think, and they're like, "Oh, great." It's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just the type of prospect you're getting, and McCoy's got this upside where it's like you're hitting this upside with all these guys along the line. They're like, not bad, not bad. I mean, it's okay. That's all right. And then with him, you've got this thing like up here, and it's a significant difference to where it's like I would have to jump for that because of the difference of it, because this is a draft that's missing that, and have the opportunity, if let's say we're picking 32, to go find a guy with actual upside. And at the 32nd pick, where all these other 31 teams ended up at that point, no doubt about it, more often than not, probably been picking for floor or picking for need. Take advantage of that, much in the same way we did with like the Byron Murphy pick, where it's like that pick, you didn't just land Murphy because you were so brilliant at evaluating Murphy and like no one could see it but you as a team. You got that pick because literally, what, Brendan, 14 offensive players went in like a row ahead of you in the first round. Teams just, I know it sounds like no teams didn't pick for need to that great of a degree, to that extreme degree. Well, you'd be surprised. We've seen it. That draft was as eye-opening as any other. 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks. It can happen. It can go down.
Yeah, and it'll probably happen at some point this year. Like Ty Simpson might go in the top 5, and there's no way that should happen, but it might.
Yeah, it gets hard too, Alex. I'll just say when we go to 32nd and you go any one of Terrell, Hood, Cisse, Chris Johnson, those 4 guys specifically, and really saying this guy's the better fit above all because they're all so versatile for the most part. They all have got a little thing here or there within their game that's not great, right? But like as far as there being one that's like really aside from the other, it gets hard for me, Brendan, to really get to one where I'm like, no, this is my ride or die here. I kind of go, I'm not trying to hedge here. I really like all of them. I really like all of them as a fit. They all have kind of similar high floor, low ceiling kind of looks to them a little bit to me.
Yeah, I'd say in terms of like pure fit that we could actually get, maybe Johnson because he's already such a great zone corner, but I don't feel radically married to anything.
Yeah, agreed. It's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had more of a certain answer, but I've turned through the tape on these guys as much as any in this draft. I just keep coming back to like, oh, I like this, I like that. Oh, there's a little thing there that's kind of I can pick on, but that's not horrible,
All right, this next guy we can skip if you want to because a lot of people think he's a safety, but some people think he's a corner. So I did list him here. We can talk about him in a future show if you want to. Your call. Treydon Stukes of Arizona.
I do have him as a safety.
Okay. We'll talk about him in the future, but he may end up being able to do a little bit of both. So that's going to be a little bit fun to talk about later.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of maybe ability to do it. Him and Jalen Kilgore both have a little bit of track record from the safety position, doing some true corner stuff. But I do think he's going to be a safety when it's all said and done.
Davison Igbinosun. So another one of these Ohio State corners with a difficult name. We already have one. Maybe we get the other. I don't know if there's another one out there. I feel like there's one more Ohio State corner with a tough name out there. But Igbinosun, 22, big. He's tall. He's lanky, and he's very long-armed. So we finally found a corner with long arms here, almost 33 inches. And he tested not great, not the best, but for a bigger guy, that's okay. 4.45 is fine when you're 6'2" and 33-inch arms. Big Board puts him in the middle of the 3rd right now. He's coming off a really great season in coverage, allowed 200 yards on 46 targets. So what's your read on Igbinosun?
He's a long, lean corner. Really comfortable most in bump and run kind of situations. A little bit of off coverage stuff they do too. So he's had a mixture of it, but I think he's more bump and run. Damn near started 4 years out there at Ohio State. I mean, he has played every year. And I think what does stand out with him, and something I always look for, because I hate those junior to senior year drop-offs, right? That should just not happen, where you should be taking a step, or your sophomore to junior year, where you should be taking a step forward in your game, not falling backwards, especially if injury isn't the excuse. And with him, you have 4 straight years of improvement. And I thought that also stood out with it. That gives you a little bit of hope. I think if you take this guy, that you're going to get more remaining from him as he goes forward, even though he's a 4-year guy, even though he has started so many games. Like you said, no touchdowns allowed on those 46 targets last year. That does stand out to a major degree. Ohio State's playing with a lot of teams that are behind, throwing a lot, putting you in more opportunities to have to be good in coverage. Here's the issue with him. The man needs to bring a saddle to the football field by how much he rides receivers up the field. You talked earlier about that physical coverage stuff in college that some corners can choose to get away with because they have the opportunity to do so. It's just not called as much there. The officials will call a little bit, but if you want to just be one of those, like, I'm going to grab and hold on to you all game long kind of guys, especially with much as he wants to run and bump and run. What I count, he's got 16 penalties last year, 5 this year. So, my man likes to get a little grabby. It's very Sauce Gardner-esque to me, Brendan. Very Sauce Gardner-esque, and not in the great way there. Now, solid as a tackler.
He had like 30 penalties over the last 3 years in college or something. It was bad.
Yeah. It's an issue, and I would hasten to guess that of those 30 penalties, we're probably looking at about like 85 to 90% of those penalties being defensive hold or pass interference. So like, it's going to carry over to the NFL level, and then dropped him down for me, quite frankly, a little bit from where other people might have him, because I don't think that this is something you're going to clean up, because he can't live as much in zone. He's got to be impressed man. And he just has that. There's guys that are panic grabbers and there's guys that aren't. And he's a panic grabber. If he thinks he's starting to lose, he's not going to use his speed to catch back up. He's not going to trust his speed. Instead, he's going to pull out those arms and try to bring you back into the fray of it, especially because he's got long arms, so he can really sometimes bring him in too much. I don't know. Maybe if you could get him to master more of the off coverage stuff, Brendan, you could remove this with him. That was in my notes as well. Like if I could just take him out of the press as much, be like, I'm not going to let you do that, because there's some decent stuff there with the off coverage. It ain't bad. So maybe you can kind of like learn him to get him to do that. So he's not, but I think if you put him in press, he's just, and it's what he should do well. He's got long arms. He should beat the hell out of these guys. He should be great in press.
Yeah.
But unfortunately to me, there was just way too much grabbiness. He's okay as a tackler. He's okay in run defense. He's pretty good with the wrap and roll stuff. Ball skills okay, but I put more of a early fourth round grade on him because of what I think is the limitations that exist in his game.
Yeah, I think he's worth a middle third pick if you think he fits your defense, you're willing to play physically, but it's going to be a little bit more narrow, his use case, because I don't think he moves very well in the open field, so he can't keep up with good route runners. I think like if he tried to guard JSN in man coverage, that would end very poorly for him because he can't move well enough. Loses a lot of his effectiveness as soon as he can't use his physicality. Like I feel like press zone or bump and run, like you said, would be good. So I think middle third, maybe late third, if he fits, is fine. But if he doesn't fit, I don't even know if you can really draft him, because I don't know what else he can do.
I'd struggle with him. I watched a lot of his tape because there's stuff to like in how he plays, and the length, as we've seen a lot of these guys in this draft at 30-inch arms. I mean, the length is legit and how it comes into play. But boy, oh boy, just I don't like watching that at the college level guys. They got to rely upon, just they jump on the back of the wide receiver and they're just daring the officials to call it every play. That's not skillful to me. And like you said, I think some of it comes, you mentioned, the speed aspect. He's doing it because I think he doesn't trust his speed. He doesn't trust his ability to change direction on with these guys at 6'2 plus. And I think that shows up.
All right. This next guy is another guy who's probably just a slot dude in the NFL, so we can be kind of quick here, but Chandler Rivers of Duke. So 22, very small, short arms. He's actually got the same arm length as Pons. So not as small, but the arm length is the same. He did test decently. I would say a 1.55 10-yard split. I'd like a little bit better given how small he is, but everything else was good. So as far as nickel corners go, I like him, but I think that's pretty much about what he is and not much more.
Yeah, I think he gives you as much, you mentioned Keontae Scott, the age, maybe not the best of what he does at the forefront being coverage. Where here in this guy, I think you're getting a little bit more of a guy with potentially the upside there in the slot, and then maybe a little bit more all-around solidity to his game and what he brings from the slot. First, having the great strengths of Keontae Scott, like he is as a tackler, like he is as a blitzer. This guy's more of the good all-around. Really great tackling technique. I think he could be a very solid slot for you and how you want him to play that. Played a lot on the outside, too. I think there's some similarities in his game to like Byron Murphy, the Minnesota Viking cornerback, former Cardinal cornerback. I think there's a lot between their two games that, make sense. But at 29 inches and 29.38 inch arms, 2%, as you can see there on Brendan's graph there. graphic, that's not just like, well, it's a little undersized. Like we're beyond T-Rex arms. It's just basically his hand coming out of each side of his chest at this point with those size arms. And that's going to be hard at 5'9.5" to operate on the outside doing that. But I really liked his tape, man. The production is fantastic. He's got 5 games in 2024. I've been watching for a couple of years. Go back just 24 with 2 targets or less. Like just dissuades throws in his direction constantly by how tight he is in coverage. A little bit of a small dip in performance this past year too. Not quite as good as his junior year because it was a guy we were looking at last year. But still a guy that I think gives you another one of those guys. We'll keep repeating this a lot on this show, but this is this draft, folks. If you could have one theme of this draft, it'd be like one word. It'd be like floor. So another guy with just really good floor for the slot.
Yeah, I think he'll be good in zone and man. I like that he's willing to stick his nose in there against the run, even though I don't know if he'll be great at it at the next level. But he gets beat deep a lot. I feel like he gives up a lot of big plays, especially last year. He gave up a lot of bigger plays. Draws too many flags as well. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to be interested in him because he doesn't fit what we need. But I guess if you're trying to be objective, late 3rd round, something like that, I don't think you can go too wrong.
Yeah, I think you have to be, if you're going to pick him either even the 3rd round, you have to have some confidence that he can play to the outside. And it was impressive watching him, at least in the Senior Bowl, where they played him a lot on the outside there to see how he'd hold up. And then in the Senior Bowl, you had a couple of the bigger receivers, right? You had the Jacoby Lane, the USC kid.
Yeah.
You had the Notre Dame guy that was out there as well. So there were some challenges.
Fields. Yeah,
Fields. Yeah. So there were some length challenges out there for him to go up against a bit. But yeah, I think I've got a late 3rd round grade. I got actually mid 3rd round grade on him. I think he'll be picked before we select in the 3rd round because some team will look at him as a very steady slot option that they can plug and play. And here you go.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next guy up here. This is, I believe, no, not quite, but we're getting close to the bottom of day 2 here. Malik Mohammed of Texas, the Longhorns, 21. A little bit more size here, but he's very lean. He's got long arms. He's tall, but he's very, very lean. He tested pretty well, though. He's got good testing scores, good 40, good split, good jumps. Late 3rd round pick on the aggregate big board right now. How do you feel about Mr. Muhammad?
I like him a little bit better than the big aggregate board. I've got a late 2nd round grade on him. I think he's a complete physical corner at his best in off coverage, then using strong bursts to break on routes as he reads and guesses the play. So really good anticipator. Thought he had good speed and athleticism on tape. Non-monstrous strength, but really good. He's kind of solid down the line. I think his strength really comes from his footwork and burst and willingness to be aggressive and drive on routes. He's not shy about stuff. He doesn't play back there tentative. This is a guy that I like his aggression. I think that does match him up well potentially with the Seattle Seahawks. I think he also does a great job of staying on top on the deep routes, despite kind of sometimes his willingness to jump on routes. He picks his times. He picks his moments. This is very important because, of course, we as a defense last year gave very few throws up over the top, speaking to how good our corners did outside of Woolen with a couple of brain fart moments of not allowing yourself to get hit deep. And so he really has that built within that I like. He does get a little overly grabby. There is the occasional guessing on the wrong route with how aggressive he is. I think some of this stuff can be fixed. I don't think it's like inherently broken in his game like you have with Igbenogson. Also an issue when he lines up in press coverage. Definitely too much grab and hold there. But I think that he's got the ability to do it. I think you can change some of the holes that are in his game. I think he's got enough athleticism and quickness and change of direction stuff that where he's not doing it like Igbenogson, where it's like, I don't have the speed to do this or run with this guy. It's just a technique thing. It's just a young guy. Give him some time to grow into him. I think he could be a really good player. I think he's an outside corner. Got the length out there to hold up as well. I think he's just another solid guy that's not going to give you a lot of upside to his game, but a guy that should give you a good solid floor to being a starter in the NFL for a long period of time.
Right. I think he's got to add a little bit of weight so he can tackle and hang with more physical players in the NFL. I don't think at 182 is going to cut it. He's got to pack on a little bit more pounds and become a better fundamental tackler. So there's a lot of potential here. There's just going to take some work to get the best out of it. I went 3rd round here, but I am kind of reconsidering that with you saying all that, because this is kind of one of the more ceiling kind of guys now that I think about it, because there's not as much of a floor here, I feel like, because he's got stuff to learn and stuff to fix, but there might be a little bit more of a ceiling here now that I'm having a chance to think about it.
I feel like there kind of is there with him. I think that the other guys we talked about at the high end of the second round are a little bit different from him to a degree, but I do think that when you look at it, and I think with 182 pounds, I think he played more 190, 195. I think that's him getting down to get that 10-yard split down to 151 and the 440 down to the 4.4 magical spot for cornerbacks that they want to be hitting. But I do think that his tape is really good, and I think that he's got some all-around stuff, that versatility angle that he brings back where it's like, okay, I got to clean up some stuff in press man, but he can do it. He's got the juice down there to run step for step with other guys. And I think he's a fairly smart player overall. I thought he was also a guy there at the Senior Bowl that did have some moments where he did step out as well. I'm not making that a big metric necessarily, but that was an opportunity to get them out there matched up in some opportunities. So I think he's a solid guy, good player.
So this next guy, one thing that I want to say here, in fact, I want you to hit the applause button on your board right now for Julian Neal.
Oh, Julian.
And the reason why I do that is because I think he was the only corner this year that did every drill at the combine. All these other guys,
let's go, Julian.
They're trying to hide stuff, man. They're trying to like protect themselves. They don't want us to know that they actually run that 4.640. Julian Neal's like, he's letting it all hang out. He's like, I'm an open book here. So Julian Neal of Arkansas, I think he was one of the guys that did not do so well at the Senior Bowl. I remember reading about that. He did not look so great at mobile. Mobile. I don't know how to pronounce it. Mobile, Alabama.
Yeah, mobile. You just got to do a little Southern accent. Mobile.
Very big. He's almost the biggest corner in this draft. He might be the biggest non-Washington Husky cornerback in this draft. Very long, got good weight to him, big hands. His testing was mixed, but given the fact that he's such a big corner, it's actually kind of good, and he's very explosive. So there is some very good stuff there too. Aggregate has him as a late third-round pick. What's your read on Mr. Neal?
He was an interesting prospect. I ended up in the third round with him, but I did like a lot of what he brought. Gives you a little bit of that extra, length and size in the outside corner. Also brings in some explosiveness and speed that you don't always get with the longer, kind of slightly taller guys. I thought he was a comfortable guy sliding between press and off coverage, but I do think he has some strengths and weaknesses when doing either, rather than either being a pure strength or either being a pure weakness. It's kind of like a press, he can run with guys and has length there to be tight in coverage with the ball in the air and not, he's kind of like a shadow where it's like just his length and his size alone sometimes allows him, with how tight he's in coverage, to just not give the receiver a pathway to making the catch. But at the same point in time, his strike point off of press is sometimes wildly inaccurate. And when he misses, the free release cooks him off the line of scrimmage like nothing else. I think we saw a little bit of that at the Senior Bowl. Great makeup speed, trails tight in coverage, does the guy that can read the quarterback's eyes and off coverage and zone really well, though I don't think he'll ever be an interception guy. I think he's a guy that is good with the catch point and being really hard to make that catch with, getting his hand in there, finding a way to dislodge the ball. Just don't think he's going to get a lot of picks. Good against the run all around way. Hard to block, rarely misses a tackle. There is a weird thing with him. He can sometimes be flat-footed post-snap, which I don't get. He almost has to do this, have his feet sort of pitter-patter prior to the snap to keep himself from getting caught flat-footed. He's got some tight hips. Takes some time to downshift at times for him when he's going from full speed. I wouldn't call him an efficient sink and driver on routes. Your click and close, the phrase you use at times. To me, the click and close is not always the best with him. And taller guys, that's not surprising. But he's a good, effective blitzer as well. So again, come back to, there's some versatility stuff in what he brings. Off coverage stuff, I thought there's some snaps he looks comfortable and some snaps he doesn't. And it's like, it sort of wildly went back and forth between on the snaps and the reps I watched between him on when he was kind of locked in and when he was kind of not. And I didn't know what to really think of that, quite honestly. And I just kept trying to watch more tape on him to get the feel. And I just kept coming back to saying, look, I think the limitations are real, but I think the strengths are real. Maybe less floor here than other corners in this draft that we've looked at, but also maybe a little bit more upside than some of these corners that had some of the good floor in this draft too, is kind of the trade-off there.
I think he's going to have to become more cerebral in terms of his ability to read offenses so he can play zone, because man's going to be trouble. His change of direction is not there. His 3-cone score kind of tells you the story here. He can't really turn. He can't change direction. And the speed to keep up on longer routes isn't really there, although he's not that slow given how big he is. I should say that. It's really not that bad. So there's something to be said for that, but he's imposing, physical, willing to stick his nose in there and run support really, really hard to make contested catches on him. Very explosive hips. His press is good. But what you see is what you get. You're getting a big corner that is not going to move all that well. So middle third round, if he's a fit for what you need, I would be okay with that. Middle, late third round.
Yeah, I'd be a late third round guy on him too with it. I could get it there, but definitely got some questions with him. Like him, good prospect, but definitely there's some questions there.
Final day 2 guy here on the aggregate is Devin Moore of Florida. Couldn't find his age, but he's another tall guy, 6'3" and a quarter, 198 pounds. Arm length is okay. Hands are small. Tested, not great, but again, he's a bigger guy. Aggregate has him right at the back end of the third. What do you think of Devin Moore?
Kind of more scheme specific, I think. So just quick reacting, bigger outside corner. Only really started 1 year, but did allow then that less than 200 yards in coverage in that one season. It's a lot of him in press dropping to depth or in off coverage dropping to depth. So kind of that cover 3, old school, a little bit Coach Carroll kind of cornerback that we would look for, and really fitting to that role, pure and simple. Some man match concepts in what you're running, but you're not really seeing him do a ton of the man stuff to me. Really clean within that role. It's one that allows a cornerback to not have to do as much stuff and that you're not put as much into predicaments of situations like you can in press man, where it's like the draw to grab and hold is kind of there because it's just one wrong step and that guy's got you lost in the sauce. So that part was cool with him. He knows how to get his big body in the way and can angle receivers. That's really what he does in the cover 3. So it's dropping in depth. Receivers try to stack him and he can just get that big body in the way and prevent them from getting to where they want to get to in the route. Active as a run defender. Thought he used his size as an advantage as a tackler and how he kind of threw his body around a bit to help himself out in that way where the undersized guys really have to wrap and roll all the way through. Works off blocks with intention, takes smart angles to the ball carrier and typically finishes. Not twitchy, not a high-end athlete. I think he average-ish when it comes to the speed-ish. Now, I know we've got the 4.5 that confirms this, but these are notes that I put down before I saw the combine. So when I say average speed, average burst, that's what you kind of got from him as well as the numbers there. Kind of surprised he even got to 1.56 on the 10-yard split, to be honest with you. He's kind of more of a 1.6 guy on the 10-yard split. So you're just getting a good overall football player, but I think one that's got to fit to more of the cover 3 kind of system scheme out there. A Washington Commanders type team would be the team that I think would look to draft this guy. A Tennessee Titans team with Saleh out there. Maybe more of that type of team would look to draft this kind of guy. I don't know if he's as much of a fit for us.
Yeah, and the injuries are a problem to me. I have heard, though, from a couple people that the Seahawks are intrigued by him. And I kind of understand why, because I think that he's good in zone. I think he's got the size to play on the boundary. I get it. It's just hard for me to really get into this one all that much because he can't stay healthy. And he ended up not really playing that much in college because of injuries. So I ended up saying 4th round. I can't do the day 2 thing because I just don't think his body's going to hold up.
I think it's a valid reason as much as anything to ding him down. And I did go late 3rd, but I certainly could be pushed into more 4th round and being talked into it because of the reasons you gave. And again, I don't know if there's going to be as much upside there to him being able to play man press situations. I think if you're as a man, he's just dropping a depth. And now we get into this more of a predictability angle when it comes to him out on the football field and what he can run. And I think that's kind of counter to the whole point of what the defense wants to run stylistically.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I do kind of feel like that there might be some interest here, a little bit more than that, but I don't know. I can't match it. I'm not super into this one personally.
Yeah. I'm not either. I wouldn't hate the pick in the last of the 3rd round, but I would also be just wondering on a couple of those questions how they're going to operate with.
19 straight with the $5. JSN had a new OC every year of his NFL career so far. I hope Fleury can succeed with us for a while. Well, those Shanahan coordinators are taking over the NFL, so if he's good, there may be the only silver lining is that so many teams have swapped out coaches in the last couple of years. There may not be a lot of openings next year.
And I think the other good part about this is that you're not only going scheme for scheme in this year, at least 19 straight, because you're right, it has the case, but at least you're going note for note. You're going playbook for playbook. The playbook's not changing under Fleury from what it was with Kubiak first. And then the second part being is that you retain so much of your coaching staff. There's going to be an understanding of how to utilize him appropriately and best so that Fleury's not going to have to just learn all of this from square one. Like, oh, he needs to run these routes out of this splits or this out of this. he's going to be working with the staff that's already understands this. And that's unique from having a whole new staff with a whole new OC coming in this year, as opposed to, I think it'd be much worse in that way.
Mm. Yeah. And look, if we can hire the 49ers tight end coach and get a good OC season out of him, that will on some level indicate that they have a really good understanding of this stuff and can probably go find another guy, like find some other guy to poach off Shanahan's tree.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
But OC cycling fast is a constant in the NFL right now. Like, this is something that every team has to deal with unless they have an OC that is bad or doesn't call plays. Like, this is just the reality.
Rams lost theirs. Shanahan probably would have lost his if he had allowed him to be interviewed, but he was like, no, he calls some of the plays. He calls 7% of the plays, okay? He's not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonder how Clay feels about that, by the way. I wouldn't be thrilled.
I can't think he likes it because it's sort of like, I mean, look, LaFleur got a job, so he doesn't really call in the plays either, but like, still it's like, bro, like, aren't you trying to help your younger coaches out? Like, aren't we trying to, like, you know, isn't their success my success? Like,
yeah. Okay, now we're on to guys that are, as of last time I checked anyway, ranked in the day 3 part, but we're only going to do a few guys. There are a lot of guys that we could go through, but we're not going to do all of them. I want to talk about Dalen Everett of Georgia because some people, myself included, feel like he should be a day 2 guy. Good size, good athleticism. He's got good speed, decent length, played for a good defense the last couple years. So Dalen Everett, give me your thoughts.
I just kind of like look at Dalen Everett and I keep coming back to like, what am I missing? Like in this draft, especially, it kind of is frustrating a little bit. And cause it's like, I must be missing something. He's got better size than you're going to see typically in this draft from a player. He's 200 pounds, more weight than you're going to get. He's got the 32-inch arms that we're missing from a lot of these guys. He goes out there and runs a 4.38 40, so better speed than we're getting. He's got a fine 10-yard split, fine broad jump, solid traits down the line, easy athlete, outside corner all the way, comfortable in both press and off coverage, playing out there with Georgia in a tough-ass conference. There's just a real ease with which he stays on top of receivers, which comes back to the 40 time matching up to what you see on tape with him, is that the effortless speed and that I don't have to crank it up to full gear. I'm just going to run with this guy like it's no thing, really stands out. Longest ball completed on him playing at Georgia against all that top end competition every single week was 36 yards and 39 yards last year. He just doesn't allow anything deep over the top, period. Period. Though he did give up a 70-yarder this year, his yards were up and down this year. So you can't stack him. That's the first thing I like about him. That's something I think would appeal to Seattle tremendously. There is a price to be paid for this a little bit with him. He does give up a good number of catches underneath. Wasn't always a sure tackler after the catch. He'll take on blocks and set the edge with vigor in the run game, but overall, just looking to barely do just more than the minimum last year. That part of his game came forward, though, and he became more of a run defender, I felt like, from where he'd been prior years. This is another one of those guys like Chandler Rivers, Brendan, that we watched going back to last year because he could maybe have come out last year. So got a chance to see him now in a couple of years and see a little bit of the development that came forward in him this year. I think his effort and willingness to get off blocks really improved this season from the last year. Very good hit. I think he's got swivelly hips for 6'1 plus. I think he can really flip those hips well, in my opinion. Oh, yeah. It's just a prospect that I don't see major deficiencies in his game. I think he's got slightly above average ball skills. Don't think he's going to be a pick machine, but I think he's opportunistic. Just don't see a big hole in his game holding him back. And that's where I came back around to, in my opinion, on this, of putting a mid-second round grade on this guy, because the production's there, multi-years of production, checks all the boxes you want physically, can run the variety of different coverages we want to run. Okay, you give up some catches underneath, but a lot of that, Brendan, is the baked-in cover 3 stuff, right? That we saw back from the old days on our defense, where if I'm having you play on top, as the evidence I posed to the showing that 39 yards and 36 yards are the longest receptions he's given up in 2 years, that the reason you're doing it is I'm telling you to stay on top as a coach. And we know this because the Georgia does what defensively? They won that wild ass scheme up front, right? Which has made it so hard for us through the years on guys like Channing Tindall and Jalen Carter to decide how good of pass rushers they are, because you're oftentimes baking stuff. So what do they try to do on the back end Georgia-wide defensively? They have their corners trying to protect that deep ball where it's like, we're going to blitz, but we don't want the price of admission to be a deep play over the top because of it. And so that's where, to me, that explains a little bit of some of the yards he gives up underneath, where it's like, well, it's not as much a flaw thing as it's much of a system thing. Like Georgia's going to take some more risk. They're going to give up some catches underneath before it, but because of it, but they're not going to let their corners get beat over the top because of it.
Yeah, I agree. He's got the size. He's got some ball skills. He understands cerebrally how to read a play. He's got pretty good press technique. He's got good footwork. Yeah, I think he'll give up some of the shorter catches, like you said. And to me, my hang up here is he's not a very good tackler. I think that can get better, though, because he has size, but he's not a very good tackler yet. He's got to improve that. But I see a third rounder here. I would spend a third round pick on Dalen Everett and feel pretty great about it, even like a mid third rounder.
It stood out being on the field and getting a chance, like literally on Senior Bowl, I was able to be on the field itself next to these guys. And it really stood out with him on the field, looking at him versus other corners, of how wide he is. Like he is really, really wide for his size, not just that length, but just his I don't know if we've got his, whatever they call it, the wingspan thing, but his wingspan's got to be pretty incredible. But I like him. I got the high second round grade on him, or mid second round grade on him. Really did like him as a player, but I must be missing something with him too. I will admit that, because he is not the consensus wise up in that area of things.
Yeah. It's not a good feeling to be on an island sometimes. You feel like you must be the crazy one.
You did. Well, you do. I just keep going. It does drive me back to the tape and go, I must be missing something. And I do likewise when it's on the other side of it and people are hyping guy up that I'm a little bit, those are the guys that I end up trying to tear as much tape through to try to find that thing that I'm missing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you gotta stick to your beliefs. You gotta hang with what it is that you think. And like, I remember a couple of years ago, it was Rob Stanton. He was talking about this with Spencer Rattler, because he was like, I think Spencer Rattler is a first round caliber player. And then he watches team after team after team after team pass on him until he gets to like the late fifth round. And he even said, like, I guess I was wrong. I don't see how that could be the case. And then every team passes on him all the way to the fifth. But at the same time, I think you got to stick to your convictions there a little bit.
I think so too. And then, you're going to be wrong on some of this stuff, but I think that I've been taught through doing this through the years is if the consensus is out there going differently than when you do, go back and watch the tape and drive back into it to try to see if you're to make sure you're not missing something. But if you don't find yourself missing something, then stay to that conviction, because you might just find yourself proven right. Sometimes the narratives on this stuff, or the way that a narrative hits on a college player coming out, can set unfairly, and it can be derived off of something that's kind of inane or small or not as, you see on tape over and over again, I guess. So, and he seems like that kind of guy for me a bit.
Right. Okay. This next one, this one's a little bit of a local favorite. I think there's going to be some interest here just because of that. Tacario Davis, Washington State, product 22. Very big. I think he's the biggest corner in this draft. 6'4", 194 pounds, 33 and 3/8 inch arms. Guy's big, and he tested pretty well for a bigger guy. He's fast, not really quick. Broad jump was okay. The aggregate has him as a mid fourth round pick right now. How you feeling about Mr. Tacario?
He's a fun cornerback. He's the better of the two out there in Washington, no doubt about that. There's some upside there with him, kind of in the mold of a little bit of the Brandon Browner type cornerback of old, where you want to put him up and have him basically living up in press. He's gifted with really long arms. He knows how to use them. He's got the Dalasan Street Fighter 2, super long off the line of scrimmage, can just hit those two into your chest and bring you to a standstill. But then he's got really good makeup speed and an ability that's unique for a guy his size to be able to run with some of these outside wide receivers and not get shaken really easily. And I thought that this year he was doing a really good job now. And I think what was his third year as a starter here or whatever of improving as a tackler, improving at getting off blocks, showing more of that willingness like Dalen Everett did on the prior. Both these guys, I thought there was a little bit of a difference on the two and what they'd done the past 2 years. And that was the specific place you were seeing improvement before the injury struck this year. Excuse me. Sorry, Brennan. So I do like him a lot. I think there is the issues you're going to get a little bit with the stop and start at times. And when I get him to flip his hips, though, that gets mitigated when you put him up into press man situations a little bit from where he's off coverage. But I do think he probably has to go to something more of a specific defense that's going to be into that sort of, we want to live in press man like the Niners now are going to go to theoretically more of the blitz press man stuff, maybe on the outside with that defense. Maybe something more along those lines would be where he has to go. I don't know if you'd want him in this defense that's going to ask him at times to be in the off coverage zone type of stuff, because I think he'd be a bit of fish out of water at that point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The press, he's going to be dominant in press, I think. I don't know how you deal with this guy in press. Very hard when he's in phase to get vertical routes past him. Fast in a straight line. He should become a great tackler. I don't think he's one right now, but he's got the build to do it. No problem. High motor, good ability, a decent ability when in zone, I think. But the lack of quickness shows up. Good route runners are going to push him around. Not a great open field mover. So he's fascinating. You're not going to find players like this everywhere for sure. I hope he can become a better tackler. To me, that's key. But the physical talent, I'd go back into the third round.
Yeah, I can understand where you're going there, because there's an upside to it here. And that's what, in a draft that doesn't have a lot of guys the upside side, you're driven to that in this draft at any position. I would get it because it's missing in a lot of ways. I just think he does have to go to something that's really a fit to what he does. And if you have him here off coverage zone, you're going to have to just commit to running press all the time, which we go back to the foundations of this defense, technically speaking, going back to the Rex Ryan of old defenses and his sons, and even what Wink Martindale runs in a lot of times of how he's run this defense. Press man stuff is where that's the original DNA for the coverages you want to run by and large. It's changed over the years. McDonald's changed it over the years, but this was an old school kind of corner that you could have, put in this role into this defense and it would fit. So there's a potential there, but I think it would definitely signal that they have an intention with him of having him live a little bit more in that area of things if they bring him here, and you're probably blitzing a little bit more if he's out there starting on the outside for you, that type of thing.
Yeah. So what grade would you say? Where'd you put him?
I put him into the fourth round myself.
Okay. That's where the aggregate has him. So you're
I think that you got the injury and you got, I think, a little bit more of a necessity to scheme fit there. Put him into more of a day 3 range.
Yeah. One final guy for this stream here. One last guy we're going to look at here. And this guy, I think we're looking at as much as anything because the Seahawks did have him in for a top 30 visit. So clearly there's something worth talking about. Andre Fuller of Toledo. So Toledo's produced some notable defensive backs in recent times, I feel like. Bigger guy. He's got good size. Short arms, though. Tested mixed. Some good stuff, some not so good stuff. Big boards put him at the back end of the 7th right now. He really only has 1 year of Toledo production. I think before then he was at a smaller school where I couldn't even find his stats, but pretty good play. So what's your read on Andre Fuller? I know you had him on the big board you sent me, I believe. So I think you had eyes on him before we even had him in for the top 30 visit.
Yeah, I've got him in the 5th round myself. A feisty outside corner that brings the juice. Those guys have that sort of tenacious spirit you'd like to have your corners have, where it's like, they can flush a play. They're going to fight blocks on the outside and on an island, get off those blocks and get on the run game at the same time. He's got that spirit, just attacks the run game, tears himself free from blockers. He tackles with force. You can throw him into any type of coverage and he'll be comfortable. Toledo ran a variety of different stuff, and they've been doing that for a while with Quinn and Mitchell. They did that a couple of years ago too. His ability to go from backpedaling full speed to reverse to full speed, where it's back, then the click and close, and then I'm going to go drive on that route and hit to get right back to full speed was really impressive. The 156 I don't think quite captures his level of short-term burst, short level of quickness burst, which is really good. Consistently extremely tight in coverage, just gives no space up for a completion, instinctive and decisive, anticipates in the run game, flows in the right direction of the play. I can see that this is maybe a little bit of why Seattle's going to him, is not only a rally to the ball defender, not only a good run defender, but the instinctually pre-snap, he's going to move to the right direction for where the run play is going to go. He can play press man and run and cover, but he's not much of a press corner per se. I mean, he's not a super physical press guy, but he can do it comfortably. Probably not a guy whose highest upside sees him picking too many balls off. He will start tugging when he's in trail coverage at times. 5th-year senior, so just a little bit of an older prospect. But if you're talking about a guy that you're looking to insert there where, let's say, Brendan, we don't get around to day 1 or day 2 in the draft, and we're coming back around and somehow maybe we get into that 6th round place we're picking. Here's a guy that you can get that where you go, the definition of I don't have a lot of upside left to be had, but the floor that I bring is pretty darn ready-made.
Yeah, I can see it. I wasn't a huge fan here. I think he's a good press corner, disruptive, strong for a corner. Oh, Pumpkin. Here we go. I was wondering what was up.
She's got to make an appearance.
hmm Yeah, and I do wonder if he ends up at safety at some point. Some people have talked about him maybe ending up as a safety, but I don't think he's a very good tackler. I don't think he's very fast. He doesn't get his head around fast enough. So I don't see a complete player. I went more like 6th round on him. If we get him in the 6th, I'm fine. No problem with that. But I wasn't huge on this one. I think he's mostly a press guy.
Yeah, I think that's why they're meeting with him. I don't think that they're meeting with him because this is a guy that's in play for day two.
Right.
And obviously you have a draft pick go up a little bit higher on this. Okay. Sorry. She's wanting some love here. Then I think that they're doing this one in anticipation of, from John's perspective, I don't want to get caught in the pickle. And we talked about this at the top of the show. And it's really the key with the cornerback room right here in this draft. A lot of really good corners. You can get guys like a Fuller, maybe in the 6th round, who could eventually be a guy that can get out there and start for you in a couple of games or start for you for half a season and hold up out there. And that you want to be aware of that process so that when you are picking with those few picks you have in day 1 and day 2, you're making sure you're staying in value. And that, okay, we didn't have a chance to touch corner in day 1 or day 2. Do we have to panic? No, because we can come back here to Fuller and we know what he's going to bring. And there's some solidity to that. And it's not stardom, but it'll be solid. It'll be a guy that's got that ability to come in there and give us a couple of games next year if we absolutely need him to do so. A guy that can compete with Nehemiah Pritchett. But I think that that's where John's trying to do by kind of already looking at a guy like that. And then you're going, okay, just in case this goes this way, I don't want to be reaching for, I have to take a corner here, because if I don't here, then we're going to not be picking for 2 more rounds and then we're screwed. I can't operate with that mentality. And that's a bit of a psychological thing. You got to, I think, John, take care of that in your own heart a little bit walking into it, because it's a penchant. It's a drive to happen if you don't.
Yeah, and Fuller is ranked very low on big boards. There is a world where he's a UDFA, and sometimes you do use top 30 visits on guys to kind of earmark them as UDFA targets. So maybe there's that too.
That's to your point. It's like we've seen on these draft classes. When you get these draft classes this so thoroughly stacked with one position so good, it's going to lead to guys getting not taken that should have been taken, and that gives you those opportunities to jump on those guys. So you're right. I mean, another place that they could maybe look to go with on this one.
Industry, thank you for the $4.99. Just so you know, chat is obsessed with crabs. New topic. I did not see that. Crab's pretty good. I like crab.
Crab is good.
Yeah. Been a while since I've had it. It's really hard to eat because you got to it's like a job trying to get the crab out of the shell.
It is the first 6-7 bites are good. And then it starts to bite 13, 14. You're kind of like, I'm good.
Yeah, I get that. I don't eat a ton of seafood. There are some seafoods that I like, but I don't know. I like salmon more than I like halibut more than crab, I think.
Yeah, I'm another guy. I'm struggle bus anyway on seafood, but yeah, I can eat both those. They're decent.
Yeah. So there are a lot of other corners in this draft that we're not going to cover today. Guys like Will Lee the third. You've got Charles Demings, who's the super small school guy in this draft. He's the guy from Stephen F. Austin. Hezekiah Masses, Ephesians Prysock, the other Washington corner, Thaddeus Dixon, TJ Hall, Lorenzo Styles Jr., the brother of Sonny Styles. So that's kind of fun. Damani Jackson, Alabama, Jadon Kennedy might play corner, might play safety out of Oregon. Devon Marshall, Jalen Husky. So it's a very good corner draft, but I think we did good today. We went about 2 hours on them. So I want to thank you, Brandon, for doing this with me, as you do every week in the lead up to the draft.
My pleasure. Always fun doing this with you, man, and breaking it down. Like you said, I could even throw some more corners on top, from the Will Lees, TJ Halls, Toriano Pride Jr. We didn't get to these guys, but there is real good value just stacked up in this class. Maybe one of the better cornerback classes as far as depth goes we've seen in recent years, and that's saying something, because we've had some strong cornerback classes.
Oh yeah. Industry Worth, thank you for the $9.99. They're still talking about it since my last super chat. Well, that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. I don't mind it.
And not at all. Not at all. We take on all topics here, Industry Worth. Thank you for the dough now.
Whenever I have a long stream going, inevitably the topic turns to fast food, and then everybody starts talking about fast food. So crab's probably better to talk about than fast food.
Indeed. We had one question there that I think is an interesting one on Lesko there.
Let's see here. So this is interesting because for those of you who maybe didn't hear, Myles Garrett redid his contract in a way that actually makes him somewhat tradable. So a lot of people are thinking, well, he's trying to get out of there.
Well, and but why I thought that it's a good time for him to bring this question up, because, if this does become on the table, it's, you talk about potentially masterclass by John to wait till everybody else is blowing out all their stuff. And now Cleveland's like, hey, we'll just let us get us this offensive line fully rebuilt in free agency. Let us get all of our work done. And then we'll come back to you guys on this, because we know you'll be willing to throw the compensation and we'll make this swing go. What are you throwing for Garrett if he becomes available in a trade?
Probably 3 firsts. And that's probably what it takes, especially at this point where your pick in this draft kind of is bad and the draft is bad anyway. And if you get Garrett, you're thinking repeat, right? That you're thinking a second Super Bowl. So even in next year's draft, 32, and like let's be real here, that's probably what it takes, right? To get somebody like Garrett coming off the season that he just had. And look, I'm a little bit uncomfortable trading that much for a guy who's already past 30, but Garrett is that guy.
He is. And we'll see if Browns really are looking to move him at this point or not. It's definitely one where they've been willing to hold on to him, but I'd willing to do it too. I don't think the compensation is that great for where you'll be picking, like you just said. And he gives you a difference maker you can't find. So
right.
I'd be willing to do it.
Real quick before we wrap up here, what do you think of Najee Harris since we had him in for a visit? Any feelings there?
No, I think you made your pick with the kid you took from the Packers and Wilson. And yeah. I don't think that I don't. Running backs who've just gone through huge injuries, just let somebody else deal with that. Let somebody else work their way through that. These guys can get back healthy, and there always tends to be soft tissue injuries, and there's the hamstring here and a pulled calf there, and just give me I want health. We already have a hard enough time at times keeping our running backs healthy through the years. I don't want to get broken parts in here to add to the problem.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I feel like that's a guy who wouldn't even make the roster if you signed him anyway. So whatever. Like if you want him as a camp body.
And I'm seeing some pushback on the picks with the first round. Let's remember with the first round picks on this too, that like there's different. I think sometimes the first round pick terminology kind of gets stuck for people. We're picking 32 this year. From the Browns' perspective, that draft capital is a second round pick. The Browns are getting a first round pick then for next year for a stacked Seahawks team at the very least that's going to be picking 26. So we say, okay, we're giving them basically a high second round grade. We're giving them a late first round grade, and then we're not going to be willing to give them a first round pick after that down the road that could be anywhere in the draft. For the potential offset of getting a difference maker player, one of the best defensive players in the NFL for the last couple of years of the prime of their career, I think that that's a worthwhile risk. But this 3 first round picks thing, I think gets a little stuck in people's craw a bit, which I get on the surface of it. If we're talking about a team picking at 15, I'm giving a first round pick. That's one thing. When you're picking 32 though, it's kind of it's different math that we have to apply to this when we talk about trying to make any trade with anybody about some big player. They're not looking at that pick going, ooh, we're going to get a blue chip player there at 32. It's a second round pick, especially this draft where, as I've said before, and I don't think anybody in this chat or Brendan would push back on this, every general manager would tell you who you're probably going to be picking at the 32nd pick. Not just John, but every other general manager in this league will be telling you whoever's the team picking at 32 is going to be picking a second round valuated guy.
Yeah.
Universally speaking, consensus speaking. And so that again, we come back to, well, do we really want to keep calling it a first round pick per se? In the way we view that in that way, to me, I think that I get why we do, but that's where that one size fits all to the first round talk sometimes that I have to kind of bristle at a little bit, because there's a little bit more to it than that.
Yeah. Omelets require breaking eggs, people.
That's right.
Got to break the egg sometimes. Okay. Right. So I think I think that's really all there is to say. Next week, we're going to probably move to a different position. I'm not 100% sure which one yet. There are a few choices. There's safety. There's defensive tackle, I think. There's maybe 1 or 2 others. I'm not 100% sure about that. But we do have a little bit of a plan here. We're not going to do every position. Edge rusher. Edge rusher is actually probably the other big one. But we do have a plan here. And we will be executing that plan in the coming weeks. So thank you, everybody, for coming out. Brandon, thank you for doing this with me.
Appreciate you as well, brother.
And we will see you again about this time next week. But don't forget, we're basking in the Super Bowl. We're thinking about great things right now. We've got a Lombardi in our back pocket, but things still go on. And We want another one, guys. We want another one. We want to win the Super Bowl every year. Maybe we won't, but we want to. So see you guys later. And don't forget, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.